I am lying in a pre-op bed at Houston Memorial. The IV is dripping a saline solution into my left arm, a cold, steady rhythm, one drop every 2 seconds. It is a Tuesday morning in late September, the kind of Texas day where the heat is already radiating off the asphalt by 8 in the morning. But inside room 412, the air conditioning hums at a sterile 68 degrees. My appendix is on the verge of rupturing. It isn't a dull ache anymore. It is a sharp, localized spike in my lower right abdomen, a quiet internal ticking clock counting down to sepsis. My phone is resting on the plastic tray table. I reach for it. My fingers feel thick from the initial dose of pain medication, but I manage to unlock the screen and press the favorite contact for my mother, Susan. It rings 3 times. On the 4th, she picks up. I don't hear her voice first. I hear the bass of a Texas country song playing through a portable speaker. I hear the clinking of glassware and someone shouting directions about a balloon arch. "Emma, make it quick," my mother says. Her voice has that breathless managing tone she uses when she is coordinating an event. "The caterers just got here and they brought the wrong color napkins." "Mom," I say. I have to pause to breathe through a fresh wave of nausea. I am at Houston Memorial. They are taking me into emergency surgery in 20 minutes. My appendix is about to burst. There is a silence on the line. But it isn't the silence of a mother processing terrible news. It isn't shock. After 30 years, I know the difference between my mother being frightened and my mother running a cost-benefit analysis. I can practically hear the gears turning, weighing the optics of a hospital visit against the schedule of a catered event. She lowers her voice, cupping the receiver. "Emma, the gender reveal is at noon. We have already paid a $3,000 non-refundable deposit for the helicopter drop. Your sister is already stressed about the wind forecast." She pauses, waiting for me to step into my designated role and offer the solution. When I don't speak, she fills the space. "Can you just text us when you wake up?" She didn't ask about the surgical risks. She didn't ask who was at the hospital with me. She asked for a post-op text message to ensure her timeline wasn't disrupted. I don't scream. I don't cry. Anger requires an expectation that things should be different, and at 30 years old, sitting in a paper gown with an IV in my arm, I am out of expectations. "Okay," I say. "Okay?" I don't add, "I love you." I don't tell her it is fine. I press the red button on the screen and end the call. A nurse with tired eyes steps into the room and asks for my personal belongings. I hand her the phone. As she places it into a clear plastic bag and seals it shut, something shifts in my chest. It doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like a ledger balancing. That is the exact moment the 30-year contract of my family dynamics legally expires in my mind. The anesthesia begins to pull me under, wrapping my brain in a heavy fog. I am alone, and for the first time in my life, I see my family with clinical, exhausted clarity. Before I tell you what I found when I woke up, take a second to like and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is right now. If you have ever been the expendable one in your family, you are going to want to hear how this ends. Now let me take you back exactly 14 days before that hospital bed. To understand how a mother chooses a helicopter over her daughter, you have to understand the demand that started it all. I am sitting in my living room. My house is quiet, organized, and paid for by my own salary. My sister Olivia and her husband Brad are sitting on my couch. Olivia is 28. She is pregnant, and she possesses the kind of weaponized fragility that has held our family hostage for 2 decades. She knows exactly when to lower her voice, when to let her eyes fill with tears, and when to press her lips together like she is fighting a battle only she can see. It is an instinct. It is the only tool she has ever needed, because it is the only tool our family ever rewarded. Brad sits next to her. He calls himself a consultant. His businesses never seem to survive past the website phase, but he always wears tailored shirts and designer loafers. They are not here for a casual Tuesday visit. They are pitching me. Brad leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Emma, we need your help," he says. "We are putting together the gender reveal party in the Austin Hills. The venue is booked, but we had some unexpected overages with the caterer and the aerial display." He smiles a bright salesman smile. "We need $15,000 to cover the remaining costs. Just a loan to tide us over until my next quarter bonuses hit." He says it with a straight face, wearing a watch that costs more than my first car. I am a forensic accountant. I spend 50 hours a week tracing hidden assets and untangling corporate fraud for an auditing firm. I look at their pristine clothes and the math in my head does not add up. I look at Olivia. Her hands are folded over her small stomach, waiting for me to pull out my checkbook and subsidize her social media performance. I tell them no. Not let me think about it. Not let me check my budget. Just no. Olivia's eyes fill with tears. Not slowly, but like a switch flipping. You always do this, she says, her voice trembling. You always have to make me feel small. I am not making you feel anything, Olivia, I say, keeping my voice level. I am telling you I am not financing a $15,000 party. She stands up. Her chair scrapes against the hardwood floor. Brad shakes his head at me, muttering about how I lack basic empathy. He puts his arm around Olivia, guiding her toward my guest bathroom. I hear the door lock. For 10 minutes, my living room is silent except for the muffled sound of my sister crying through the wall. I sit on my couch and wait. I know what happens next. The pattern is as predictable as gravity. My phone rings. It is my father, Thomas. For 32 years, his primary parenting strategy has been avoiding conflict with my mother. He does not ask what happened. He does not ask for my side of the story. He delivers a directive. Emma, what are you doing to your sister? He asks, his voice tight. She called your mother crying. Don't upset her, just help them out. You are the strong one. You? That phrase. The strong one. I used to wear it like a badge of honor. I paid my own rent at 22. I managed complex financial audits by 26. I did not call home crying. I called home to share good news. I didn't realize until much later that strong was just the word my family used for expendable. It meant you are the one who can absorb the damage so the rest of us do not have to look at it. It meant my financial boundaries were a mere inconvenience to their comfort. I tell my father no. I'm not giving them the money, Dad. I hang up the phone. Olivia and Brad leave my house shortly after without saying a single word to me. I watch their luxury SUV pull out of my driveway. I lock the door and go back to my evening. I thought I had set a boundary. I thought the conversation was over and the matter was closed. But I did not realize that Olivia did not actually need my permission to take what she wanted. I did not know that my simple refusal was just the starting gun for a federal crime. The morning after my sister and her husband walked out of my house, the silence began. It was not a passive silence. It was a highly orchestrated tactical freeze-out designed by my mother. Susan Carter does not yell when she is defied. She removes your access to the family ecosystem. She wields absence like a blunt instrument. 2 days after I refused to hand over $15,000 for the gender reveal party, my phone stopped ringing. There were no more daily updates about centerpieces or ultrasound appointments. Sunday dinner came and went. I only knew it happened because my mother posted a curated album on her social media feed. The photos showed my father grilling steaks and Olivia laughing with a slice of cake. The caption read, "Surrounded by the only people who truly matter." It was a public execution of my status as a daughter. I did not reach out. I spent my days at my accounting firm auditing a massive logistics company. I look at balance sheets for a living. I trace hidden assets and untangle corporate fraud. My brain is wired to find the missing numbers. And when I looked at my brother-in-law Brad, I saw nothing but a hollow shell. Brad called himself a venture consultant. He drove a leased Porsche Macan and wore tailored linen suits. He talked loudly about crypto portfolios and real estate syndication at every family holiday. But I had run a soft background check on him when he proposed to my sister. His consulting firm had zero reported revenue. He was floating his entire lifestyle on high-interest personal loans and quiet bailouts from my parents' retirement account. My mother had given them the down payment for their house in the Austin Hills. She called it an early inheritance. When I bought my own modest townhouse with a conventional mortgage, she told me I was being overly independent to a fault. I knew Brad was drowning in debt. I just did not know he was planning to use my life raft to save himself. 4 days after the refusal, the conflict escalated from passive-aggressive posts to active intimidation. I was walking through the glass and marble lobby of my office building in downtown Austin. I was holding a coffee and reviewing a digital file on my tablet. I looked up and saw Brad standing by the security desk. He was not there for a casual visit. His jaw was tight and his posture was rigid. He intercepted me before I could reach the elevator bank. He stepped into my path and grabbed my elbow. It was a physical escalation that set off every alarm bell in my head. I pulled my arm back sharply. "Do not touch me," I told him, keeping my voice entirely level. He dropped the friendly salesman act. He stepped closer, lowering his voice into a threatening register. "Emma, you are causing a lot of stress for my pregnant wife," he said. Your mother is sick over this. You are going to write that check or your parents are going to cut you out entirely. You are acting like a bitter spinster who hates seeing her sister happy. He was trying to rattle me in my own place of business. He was using the exact psychological levers my mother had installed in my brain since childhood. But he underestimated the environment. I was not in my childhood living room. I was in the lobby of a firm where I regularly stared down executives who tried to hide millions in offshore accounts. I looked at him with complete detachment. I looked at his shoes and noticed the scuffed soles. I looked at his watch and recognized it as a replica. I audit companies with 10 times your imaginary revenue in my sleep, Brad, I said. Your debt-to-income ratio is a matter of public record if you know where to look. Do not try to hustle a forensic accountant. His face flushed a deep mottled red. I pointed to the security guard standing 15 feet away. If you ever step foot in my office building again, I will have you arrested for trespassing. Now get out. He backed away, but his eyes were calculating. He looked at me with pure venom. The mask dropped entirely. He turned and walked out through the revolving doors. That was the moment he decided I was not family. I was just an obstacle standing between him and the money he needed to maintain his illusion. I thought I had won that confrontation. I thought asserting a hard boundary would end the extortion attempt. But I made a fatal miscalculation. I assumed they needed my permission to take my money. Forensic accountants are paranoid by nature. My credit is locked, my files are encrypted. But blood makes you careless. You assume the locks on your doors are for strangers, not for the people who shared your childhood bathroom. I began to think back to a Tuesday afternoon 3 months prior. Olivia had come over to my house crying hysterically. She said she had lost her purse at a coffee shop and needed to file an expedited police report online. She asked to use my home office laptop. I had logged in and handed the machine to her. I went to the kitchen to make her a cup of tea to calm her down. I left her alone with my unlocked computer for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is an eternity if you know exactly what you are looking for. I had a digital folder on my desktop labeled Tax Documents. It contained my unredacted personal information, my social security number, my banking routing numbers, my employer identification history, everything a person would need to bypass a credit freeze and open a massive line of credit. She did not lose her purse that day. She was on a scouting mission. While I was ignoring my mother's silent treatment and shutting down Brad in the lobby, they were already putting the stolen data to use. The stress of the family rejecting me compounded with the grueling hours at my firm. The human body keeps a score of the things the mind refuses to process. 7 days after the refusal, my stomach started to ache, a low-grade throb in my lower right side. I dismissed it. I had been conditioned my entire life to ignore my own pain. I was the strong one. The strong one does not go to a doctor for a stomach ache. I took ibuprofen and worked a 12-hour shift auditing a supply chain vendor. 10 days after the refusal, I ran a fever. I assumed it was a stress-induced flu. I was sweating through my work blouses and shivering in meetings. My mother posted a photo of Olivia trying on expensive maternity dresses in a boutique. The caption read, "Shopping with my only sunshine." I looked at the photo on my phone, and my abdomen tightened with a sharp cramp. I told myself I was just internalizing their toxicity and turning it into a physical illness. Day 12. I was at the grocery store trying to buy ginger ale and crackers. I had to abandon my shopping cart in the produce aisle because a wave of nausea hit me so hard my vision swam. I gripped the edge of a fruit display bin, gasping for air. A stranger touched my shoulder and asked if I needed water. I shook my head, forced myself to stand upright, and walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for 20 minutes, waiting for the parking lot to stop spinning. I convinced myself I just needed a weekend of rest. 14 days after the refusal, my body made the decision for me. I woke up at 3 in the morning. The dull throb was entirely gone. In its place was a blinding white-hot spike driving through my lower right abdomen. I tried to push the blankets off and stand up. My knees instantly buckled. I hit the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. I was sweating profusely, soaking through my pajamas. I could not stand. I could not crawl to the door. I managed to drag my upper body toward the nightstand and pull my phone down by the charging cable. My fingers shook as I dialed emergency services. The paramedics arrived in 9 minutes. They carried me out of my house and put me on a stretcher. The EMT pressed his gloved hand against my stomach, and I nearly blacked out from the sheer agony. He looked at his partner and said, "We need to move right now. She is presenting with acute appendicitis." I was loaded into the back of the ambulance. The siren began to wail, tearing through the quiet Texas suburb. I stared at the metal ceiling of the vehicle while the paramedic started an IV line in my hand. He leaned over and asked me if there was anyone they should call, family or a husband. I lay there listening to the siren. I am single. I have a father who defers to his wife to avoid conflict. I have a mother who orchestrates silent treatments to enforce compliance. I have a sister who views me as a bank account. I looked at the paramedic and shook my head. I told him there was no one to call. They wheeled me into the emergency room at Houston Memorial. The fluorescent lights blurred above me, passing in quick succession. Doctors in scrubs surrounded my bed, prepping me for immediate surgery. They told me I had minutes before the organ ruptured and flooded my body with toxins. They left me in the pre-op bay for just a moment to process the consent forms. That is when the primal instinct of a terrified child kicked in. The sheer terror of going under the knife alone overrode 30 years of hard logic. I picked up my phone. I dialed my mother. And she told me to text her when I woke up because they had a helicopter deposit to protect. I do not wake up a few hours later. My body rejects the anesthesia. There is a secondary infection. The surgeon has to go back in to clean the abdominal cavity. I lose 36 hours of my life to a medically induced sleep. When my eyes finally open, the room is a blinding white. The only sound is the rhythmic hiss and beep of a vital signs monitor. My mouth tastes like copper and stale air. I cannot move my torso. A thick layer of gauze and medical tape covers my lower right side. I stare straight up. The ceiling is made of square acoustic tiles. Each tile has a pattern of tiny perforated holes. I count them because counting keeps the panic out. There are exactly 142 tiles visible from my flat position on the mattress. I count them twice to be sure. My phone is resting on a wheeled tray next to my bed. The nurse must have pulled it out of the plastic bag. I lift my left arm. The IV line pulls slightly against my skin. I grasp the cold metal edge of the phone and bring it to my face. The screen illuminates. There are notifications. 3 emails from work. A calendar reminder for a dentist appointment. A weather alert for Travis County. I tap the recent calls log. There are 0 missed calls from Susan. 0 missed calls from Thomas. 0 missed calls from Olivia. Not a single text message asking if I survived the procedure. Not a single inquiry to see if I'm awake. I tap the social media icon on my home screen. The feed refreshes. The algorithm knows my family tree. The very first post is a high-definition video uploaded by my mother. It is tagged at a luxury estate in the Austin Hills. The camera pans across a sprawling manicured lawn dotted with white folding chairs and floral arrangements. The sky is a bright, cloudless blue. A low rumble builds in the background of the audio. A chartered helicopter swoops into the frame, hovering 50 feet above the grass. The side door of the aircraft slides open, and a thick, heavy plume of vivid blue powder erupts into the air. The camera snaps to my parents. Thomas and Susan are standing on a stone patio, holding crystal champagne flutes high above their heads. They are cheering. Their mouths are open in wide, triumphant smiles. The lens shifts to Olivia. She is wearing a flowing white maternity gown. She covers her face with her hands, weeping beautiful, photogenic tears. Brad is standing right behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, grinning for the hired videographer. I lie in my hospital bed watching the blue dust settle over the Texas grass. A nurse walks in and hands me a small plastic cup filled with ice chips. I place a single chip on my dry tongue. The ice melts into cold water. I watch the video loop 3 times. I watch my mother toast to her expanding family, while her eldest daughter lies under a sterile sheet with 18 internal stitches. I do not leave a comment. I do not send a text message. I press the power button on the side of the device, holding it down until the screen goes flat black. I place the phone face down on the tray. I do not cry. Crying is an act of grief, and grief requires the loss of something valuable. I realize looking at that dark glass that I have lost nothing. You cannot lose people who were never really there. The hospital clears me for discharge the following afternoon. The protocol requires a responsible adult to drive the patient home. I do not call my blood relatives. I call my neighbor. Her name is Martha Higgins. She is 68 years old. She wears faded denim jackets and spends her mornings feeding the stray cats that wander through our townhouse complex. We are not close friends, but we share a property line and occasionally exchange mail. I dial her number and state my situation plainly. I am at Houston Memorial. I had surgery. I cannot drive. She does not ask a single probing question. She just asks for my room number. An hour later, Mrs. Higgins walks into my room. She does not bring flowers or balloons. She brings a pair of loose sweatpants and slip-on shoes she fetched from my house using the spare key I gave her last year. She helps the nurse transition me from the bed to a wheelchair. The physical movement sends a sharp, raw, burning sensation through my abdomen. I grip the armrest tightly, holding my breath. Mrs. Higgins does not offer empty platitudes. She just waits patiently until my breathing steadies. She pushes me through the sliding glass doors into the oppressive afternoon heat. Her car is an ancient beige sedan with faded paint and a cracked dashboard. The air conditioning barely functions. I ease myself into the passenger seat, reclining it as far back as the mechanism allows. We drive the 20 miles to my house in silence. It is not the punishing tactical silence my mother uses. It is a respectful quiet, the kind of quiet that gives a wounded animal space to breathe. I watch the Texas highway roll past the window. I look at the passing strip malls and gas stations. The world is moving exactly as it did before my organ failed. The contrast is grounding. The universe does not pause for a family betrayal. We pull into my driveway. Mrs. Higgins cuts the engine. She walks around to my side of the vehicle and offers her arm. I lean heavily against her small frame. We navigate the concrete walkway, one agonizing step at a time. My living room looks exactly as I left it. The couch cushions are neat, the television is dark. The silence of the empty house is heavy. She guides me to the sofa and arranges 3 pillows behind my back. She pulls a light blanket over my legs. Then she walks into my kitchen. I hear the clinking of glassware. She runs the tap until the water is cold. She returns to the living room and sets a tall glass on the coffee table right within my reach. She stands beside the sofa looking down at me. Her eyes are a pale, sharp blue. She folds her hands in front of her denim jacket. She has not asked a single question since I called her. But now she looks around the empty townhouse. "Emma," she says, her voice rough like dry leaves. "Where are your parents?" I look at the glass of water. The condensation is pooling at the base. I think about the helicopter. I think about the crystal champagne flutes and the blue powder. I do not try to protect their reputation. I do not try to soften the reality. "They had a party to attend," I say. My voice is flat, devoid of any emotion. Mrs. Higgins does not gasp. She does not offer a polite excuse on their behalf. The soft lines around her mouth tighten, her pale eyes narrow. Her face does something hard and sharp. It is the look of a woman who has lived long enough to recognize cruelty when she sees it. She reaches out and pats my shoulder once, a firm, grounding touch. "I will be next door if you need anything," she says. She turns and walks out of my house, locking the front door behind her. I am left alone in the quiet. The silence begins. But it is my silence now. It is a fortress. I spend the rest of the evening drifting in and out of a medicated haze. I drink the cold water. I stare at the dark television screen. My body demands rest to heal the torn tissue and the surgical wounds. But my mind is awake. The forensic accountant inside my brain is beginning to categorize the events of the past 2 weeks: the unannounced visit, the demand for $15,000, the physical intimidation in my office lobby, the tactical freeze-out, the helicopter. The pieces of the puzzle are laying on the table. They form a picture of escalating desperation. Brad and Olivia did not just want my money, they needed it. People who lease luxury cars and throw country club parties do not corner relatives in office lobbies over a caterer bill unless the financial floor is collapsing beneath them. I close my eyes. I know something is fundamentally wrong with their math. The desperation in Brad's eyes was real. The fake tears from my sister were a cover for a genuine panic. They needed capital and they were denied. A person drowning in debt does not simply stop swimming when the first ship sails past. They look for another piece of wood to cling to. I fall asleep on the couch analyzing the variables. The pain medication pulls me down into a dreamless void. When I wake up the next morning, the sunlight is streaming through the blinds. The physical pain is still there, a dull, persistent ache anchored to my right side. But my mind is sharper. I reach for my laptop resting on the side table. I open the lid. I need to run my routine security checks. I need to look at my own ledgers. I type in my master password. The screen brightens. I do not know it yet, but the silence of this house is about to be shattered by a string of digital numbers that will change the trajectory of my entire life. It is the second morning of my recovery. The sharp agony in my abdomen has receded into a dense, persistent ache. I manage the discomfort with a strict schedule of prescription painkillers. I swallow 2 white pills with a glass of tap water and lower myself carefully onto the living room sofa. The Texas sun bleeds through the horizontal blinds, casting sharp geometric shadows across the hardwood floor. I am bound to this couch by 18 internal stitches and medical orders. I am bored. My brain is used to analyzing 50-page financial disclosures by 8 in the morning. Sitting still feels like a secondary punishment. I reach for my work laptop resting on the coffee table. I balance the machine on my knees. The metal casing is cool against my skin. I type the web address for my personal credit monitoring portal. It is a reflex, a morning habit forged by a decade of working in the corporate auditing sector. You cannot spend your life tracking hidden liabilities for billion-dollar logistics firms without keeping a paranoid watch over your own ledger. I type in my 2-factor authentication code. The dashboard renders on the screen. My credit score is usually an immaculate 812. Today, a bright red alert banner spans the top of the interface. My score has plummeted by 60 points. I stop breathing. The room tilts on its axis. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen suddenly sounds deafening. I click the alert. The portal redirects me to the recent activity log. There is a newly opened revolving line of credit. The origination date is 8 days ago. The approved limit is $42,000. The current balance is $42,000. The account is maxed out. Every single available cent was drawn down in a single billing cycle. I do not panic. Panic is a useless emotion reserved for people who do not know how to read a paper trail. I click the account details to expand the metadata. The lender is a commercial bank based in Dallas. The loan classification is a small business term loan. The primary guarantor is listed as Emma Carter. The business entity holding the debt is Apex Consulting Group LLC. Apex. I stare at the word. Brad loves that word. He used it 3 years ago for a failed drop-shipping venture that evaporated before it ever filed a tax return. I open a new browser tab. I navigate to the Texas Comptroller website. I bypass the public search portal and log into the professional database I use for my firm. I pay the state fee to pull the franchise tax filings and the articles of incorporation for Apex Consulting Group LLC. The PDF document loads in 3 seconds. The registered agent is Bradley Sutton. The primary business address is a 4-bedroom modern farmhouse in the Austin Hills, Olivia and Brad's house. I scroll down to the signature line. The electronic signature on the incorporation documents matches the timestamp on the loan application. They used my social security number. They used my immaculate credit history to bypass the commercial underwriting process. They registered a fraudulent holding company, linked my identity as the financial backer, and drained the maximum allowable capital. I look at the final disbursement date on the loan schedule. The funds were transferred out of the commercial account exactly 48 hours ago. 48 hours ago, I was lying on a gurney in Houston Memorial Hospital. My appendix was on the verge of rupturing. I was waiting for the anesthesia to take effect. 48 hours ago, my mother was telling me to text her later because she was too busy coordinating a helicopter drop to deal with a medical emergency. The betrayal layers itself, stacking up like bricks in a wall. They did not just abandon me at the hospital, they capitalized on my distraction. While I was fighting off sepsis, they were actively committing federal wire fraud to fund a catered party and sustain their illusion of wealth. I understand now why Brad confronted me in the lobby of my office building. He did not need my permission to steal the money. He already had my data from the day Olivia used my home computer to file her fake police report. He confronted me because he wanted a clean check. A legitimate loan would have covered his tracks. When I refused the legitimate route, he activated the fraudulent one. He assumed I would not notice the credit inquiry until the end of the month. He assumed I would be too busy recovering from an unexpected surgery to run a routine financial diagnostic. He underestimated my profession. He underestimated my memory. I do not pick up my phone. I do not call my sister to demand an explanation. I do not call my mother to scream. Screaming expects an apology. Screaming is an invitation for the other person to manipulate the narrative. If I call Olivia, she will manufacture tears. She will tell me it was a misunderstanding. She will tell me Brad made a mistake with the paperwork. She will run to our mother and Susan will tell me I am being unreasonable and vindictive. I am a forensic accountant. I do not want an apology. I want a conviction. I open Microsoft Excel. I create a new blank spreadsheet. The grid is clean and infinite. I label the first column date. I label the second column transaction. The third is fraud type. The fourth is legal action. I begin to document. I pull the IP address logs from my home router for the Tuesday Olivia visited my house. I cross-reference the timestamp of her visit with the timestamp of the initial soft credit pull from the Dallas bank. They match perfectly. I download the forged loan agreement. I export the routing numbers. I map the entire dependency chain of their crime. I organize the data with cold mechanical precision. Every keystroke is a nail in their financial coffin. I spend 4 hours building the architecture of their downfall. I do not feel anger. I feel a clean, hyper-focused heat. I'm translating 20 years of emotional abuse into raw, actionable data. For decades, my family used my competence as a shield to protect Olivia from the consequences of her own actions. Now I am turning that exact same competence into a weapon. The spreadsheet is flawless. The evidence is irrefutable. But before I can execute the next phase of my strategy, my body intervenes. A sharp, throbbing pain spikes through my incision site. I check the clock on the wall. It is early afternoon. I missed my last dose of pain medication. I stand up from the sofa, moving slowly to avoid tearing the internal sutures. I walk into the kitchen and open the cabinet above the sink. I reach for the orange prescription bottle the hospital pharmacy sent home with me. The bottle rattles. It is not empty, but it is the wrong medication. It is the anti-nausea pill. I check the counter. I check my purse. The primary post-op antibiotic and the heavy painkiller are missing. The discharge nurse must have failed to pack the second bag of prescriptions in the rush to clear my bed. I grip the edge of the granite countertop. I am out of the medication keeping the secondary infection at bay. I am under strict orders not to drive for 2 weeks. I cannot walk the 3 miles to the local pharmacy. I cannot navigate a rideshare app in my current physical state. The doorbell rings. I shuffle toward the entryway. I look through the peephole. It is Mrs. Higgins. She is holding a Tupperware container and a stack of mail she collected from my box. I unlock the deadbolt and pull the door open. Mrs. Higgins steps inside. She takes one look at my face and sets the container on the entry table. "You are sweating," she says, her voice sharp and observant. "You are pale." What is wrong? I tell her the hospital did not send the antibiotics home with me. I tell her the pain is breaking through. Mrs. Higgins does not hesitate. She walks straight into my kitchen and spots the emergency contact sheet pinned to my refrigerator with a magnetic clip. I created that list 3 years ago when I bought the house. The top name on the document is Susan Carter. Before I can stop her, Mrs. Higgins pulls a flip phone from her denim jacket. She punches in the numbers with rapid, deliberate force. She puts the phone to her ear. I watch her standing in my kitchen, surrounded by the quiet evidence of my ruined family. The line connects. The performance my mother is putting on for the Austin High Society is about to collide with a retired school principal who has absolutely no respect for the script. Mrs. Higgins stands in the center of my kitchen holding her silver flip phone to her ear. The volume on the earpiece is loud. It is loud enough that I can hear the dial tone ringing through the quiet space of my house while I lean heavily against the granite island. I am gripping the edge of the counter to keep my knees from buckling. The pain in my abdomen is a sharp, biting sensation, but my mind is entirely focused on the device in my neighbor's hand. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. The line connects. I hear the distinct, layered background noise of a high-end aesthetic salon. The low whir of a massage chair. The soft jazz playing through overhead speakers. The quiet murmur of affluent women discussing weekend plans. Susan Carter answers on the 4th ring. Her tone is bright and polished. It is the exact voice she uses for event coordinators and country club receptionists. "Hello, this is Susan." Mrs. Higgins does not offer a polite greeting. She does not introduce herself with the soft deference my mother expects from strangers. She speaks with the precise, measured cadence she utilized for 3 decades to address truant students and neglectful parents from behind a middle school principal desk. "Am I speaking to Emma's mother?" "Yes, this is Susan. Who is calling?" "My name is Martha Higgins. I live next door to your daughter. I am calling because her hospital pharmacy failed to pack her secondary post-op antibiotics. She cannot safely operate a vehicle. I need someone from her immediate family to drive to the local clinic, pick up the script, and bring it to her house to sign the medical release. There is a pause on the line. I can hear a slight rustling sound. Susan is likely shifting in her chair or covering the receiver with her hand. When she speaks again, the polished conversational tone is fractured. It is replaced by a defensive clipped rhythm. Post-op. What are you talking about? Emma has a stomach bug. She is resting at home. Susan is running the script. It is the exact narrative she invented to explain my absence from the gender reveal party to her friends. She told her social circle I was under the weather. She told everyone I stayed home so I would not get her pregnant daughter sick. She built a convenient lie to protect her image, and she believed her own story because she never bothered to call me and verify the truth. Mrs. Higgins looks at me. Her pale, sharp blue eyes trace the outline of the thick surgical dressing visible beneath the hem of my loose sweatpants. She does not blink. She does not look away. A stomach bug. The words leave Mrs. Higgins' mouth like heavy stones dropping onto a hardwood floor. Susan, your daughter had an emergency organ removal 3 days ago. She has 18 internal stitches. She was discharged from Houston Memorial yesterday afternoon. I know this because I am the person who wheeled her out of the surgical ward and drove her home. The silence on the line is total. The soft jazz of the nail salon continues playing in the background, but my mother does not speak. She does not breathe. Mrs. Higgins leans forward slightly. She grips the phone tighter. She is currently standing in her kitchen, sweating through her clothes because her pain management has lapsed. So I am going to ask you one time, where the hell have you been? Susan Carter operates exclusively on a currency of optics. In the affluent circles of suburban Texas, your social standing is dictated by the seamless presentation of your domestic life. Susan sits on 2 local charity boards. She organizes neighborhood fundraising galas. She is the woman who mandates coordinated matching outfits for holiday cards and books, private dining rooms 6 months in advance. She views motherhood not as an act of nurturing, but as a public relations campaign. Her children are extensions of her brand. Olivia is the star product. I am the reliable, silent infrastructure holding the stage together. For 30 years, my mother maintained the illusion of a flawless family because I never publicly contradicted her. When they abandoned me at my college graduation to deal with a minor inconvenience for Olivia, I told my roommates my parents had a flat tire. When they forgot my birthday, I bought my own cake and told my coworkers we celebrated over the weekend. I absorbed their negligence and shielded them from public scrutiny. But in less than 2 minutes, a retired school principal in a denim jacket just took a sledgehammer to my mother's pristine maternal resume. Mrs. Higgins did not just expose a lie, she exposed a profound, unnatural failure. Susan did not know her own daughter had been hospitalized. She chose to prioritize a helicopter dropping blue confetti over a hospital bed, and now a neutral third party holds the proof. In my mother's world, there is no sin greater than looking bad in front of an audience. And Mrs. Higgins is a highly observant, hostile audience. The line goes dead. Susan hung up the phone. She did not ask for my home address. She did not ask to speak to me to verify my condition. She terminated the connection because she was sitting in a public space and her carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time. Mrs. Higgins lowers the flip phone. She snaps it shut and drops it into the deep pocket of her jacket. She looks at me standing by the island. She does not offer an apology on behalf of my mother. She does not offer empty sympathy. She simply reaches for her car keys resting on the entry table. "Write down the name of your pharmacy on this notepad," she says, handing me a pen. "I am going to go retrieve your medication. Go sit down before you tear a suture." I write the address on the paper. She takes it, turns around, and walks out the front door. The deadbolt clicks into place. I shuffle back to the living room sofa. The physical pain is biting into my side, but my mind is racing with clinical precision. The variables on the board have fundamentally changed. I spent the morning documenting the federal wire fraud committed by my sister and brother-in-law. I mapped out the stolen $42,000. I prepared the financial evidence to destroy Brad and Olivia. But Mrs. Higgins just accelerated the timeline on the family front. My mother is currently sitting in a leather chair at a salon, realizing she has lost control of the narrative. She knows she cannot spin this situation. She cannot tell her country club friends that I am a bitter daughter acting out for attention. A stranger has the medical facts. The optics test has been decisively failed. I know exactly what will happen next. I do not need a crystal ball. I just need to apply predictive modeling to toxic behavior. The Carter family machinery is going to shift into immediate damage control mode. They are not going to process the fact that I almost died from sepsis. They are going to process the fact that they look negligent to an outsider. They need to neutralize the threat to their reputation. Susan will not call me directly. She is too furious about being humiliated by a neighbor. Confronting me would require her to admit fault. She will dispatch the designated peacekeeper. She will deploy the man whose entire existence in our household revolves around managing her discomfort. I sit on the sofa and wait. I watch the second hand sweep across the face of the wall clock. 10 minutes pass. 15 minutes. The quiet in the house is heavy with anticipation. I stare at my smartphone resting on the coffee table next to my laptop. The laptop still holds the open spreadsheet detailing the fraudulent commercial loan. The screen goes dark, entering sleep mode. 22 minutes after Mrs. Higgins ended the call, the phone illuminates. A generic ringtone breaks the silence. The caller ID displays the name in bright white letters. It is not Susan. It is not Olivia. It is Thomas, my father. He is calling to execute a public relations strategy. He is calling to patch the hole in the ship before it sinks. He is calling to make sure I absorb this latest trauma quietly so the family portrait does not crack any further. I reach forward and pick up the device. I run my thumb over the screen. I press the green icon to accept the call. The silent period is officially over, and the real confrontation is about to begin. I press the green icon on the glass screen to accept the call. I do not say hello. I bring the device to my ear and listen to the ambient noise transmitting from the other side. I hear the muffled rhythmic thumping of a car engine idling. I hear the faint clicking of a turn signal. My father did not call me from the nail salon. He retreated to the leather interior of his imported sedan to make this phone call. He isolated himself in a climate-controlled box because Thomas Carter treats family conflict the same way he treats a severe weather warning. He takes shelter and waits for the storm to pass. Emma, he says. His voice does not carry the frantic pitch of a parent who just learned his child was hospitalized. It carries the strained, exhausted cadence of a middle manager who has just been handed a public relations disaster 10 minutes before the end of his shift. For 32 years, my father has employed a single parenting strategy. He avoids the blast radius of my mother. Thomas is a man who spent his entire career in corporate logistics. He builds supply chains. He analyzes routes for efficiency. He applies that exact same methodology to his marriage. Susan is the primary stakeholder. Olivia is the preferred asset. I am the contingency plan. I learned how he operated when I was 16. Olivia had borrowed my father's car and backed it into a brick retaining wall at a shopping center. She shattered the taillight and dented the bumper. Instead of holding her accountable, Thomas drove the car to a body shop, paid $2,000 in cash, and parked it in the garage before Susan came home from a charity luncheon. He told me never to mention it. He did not protect Olivia out of grace. He protected Olivia because holding her accountable would have caused her to cry, which would have caused Susan to scream, which would have ruined his quiet Saturday evening. He purchases his own peace by subsidizing their terrible behavior. He is calling me now to make a purchase. Emma, why is some crazy woman calling your mother and yelling at her? He asks the question with a tone of heavy inconvenience. He does not ask who the woman is. He does not ask if her medical claims are accurate. He goes straight to the disruption of their social standing. I take a slow, shallow breath. The stitches pull tight against my abdominal wall. She is not a crazy woman, Dad, I say, keeping my vocal register flat. She is my neighbor. She called because the hospital pharmacy failed to pack my secondary post-op antibiotics, and I am not legally permitted to drive a vehicle. Thomas exhales sharply into the receiver. I hear the leather of his steering wheel squeak as he shifts his grip. You know Olivia's hormones are all over the place right now, he says. His voice drops into a placating rhythm. You know your mother is stressed with the shower planning and the nursery renovations. We have a lot of moving parts this week, Emma. I stare at the blank wall of my living room. They are doing it again. It is a masterful psychological pivot executed with decades of practice. He is actively repackaging my physical trauma as a mere inconvenience to Olivia's narrative. He is asking me to look at my own ruptured organ and apologize for the shadow it casts on my sister's pregnancy. I had surgery, Dad. I say the words slowly. I articulate each syllable. I want to force him to acknowledge the medical reality. I want him to hear the clinical fact that an infected organ was cut out of my body while he was drinking champagne on a manicured lawn. Right, right, he stammers, waving the fact away as if swatting a fly. But you are home now. You are fine. The neighbor said you were discharged. Why didn't you just text us to let us know you were back at your house? The silence stretches between us. It is a heavy, revealing silence. I realize in that exact moment he is not calling out of guilt. There is zero remorse in his voice. He is calling to manage me. Susan sent him to secure the perimeter. They need me to absorb this slight the same way I absorbed every other slight. They need me to agree to the unwritten terms of the Carter family contract. The contract dictates that I am not allowed to be a victim because being a victim requires them to be caretakers, and their caretaking reserves are exclusively allocated to Olivia. They need me to send a polite text message apologizing for the neighbor's outburst so the family portrait can remain intact. I do not argue. Arguing is a negotiation, and I am no longer sitting at the bargaining table. I am focusing on my recovery, I say. I pull the phone away from my ear before he can form another sentence. I press the red button. The call disconnects. The house returns to a stark ringing quiet. I look at the device in my hand. It is a conduit for their toxicity. It is a leash they use to pull me back into the fold whenever my independence threatens their ecosystem. I open the settings menu. I tap my mother's contact profile. I scroll to the bottom of the screen and press the block caller option. A prompt asks me to confirm. I press confirm. I open my father's profile. I press block. I navigate to Olivia. I press block. I navigate to Brad. I press block. The digital barrier goes up. It is a modern invisible wall. They can dial my number 100 times and they will receive nothing but an automated dead end. They can send 1,000 texts and the data will evaporate into the cellular void. I have severed the lines of communication. I set the phone face down on the coffee table. My heart rate is resting at a steady 60 beats per minute. I do not feel the sting of rejection. I feel the clean, cold relief of a severed anchor. I needed this quiet. I needed the familial noise to stop. I hear the crunch of tires on the concrete driveway outside. I hear a car door slam. A moment later, a key turns in the deadbolt of my front door. Mrs. Higgins steps into the entryway. She is holding a small white paper bag sealed with a staple. The logo of the local pharmacy is printed on the front. She locks the door behind her and walks into the kitchen. She retrieves a fresh glass from the cabinet, fills it with filtered water, and walks into the living room. She hands me the paper bag and the glass. I tear the top of the bag open and pull out the orange prescription bottle. It contains the heavy antibiotics required to fight the secondary infection. I twist the childproof cap, swallow one of the large white pills, and wash it down with the cold water. Mrs. Higgins stands near the sofa looking down at me. She does not ask if my parents called. She does not ask if the situation is resolved. She reads the posture of my shoulders and the flat, unblinking focus in my eyes. "I'm going to make you a bowl of soup," she says, turning back toward the kitchen. "You need to eat something solid before those pills ruin your stomach lining." I nod. "Thank you, Mrs. Higgins." She goes to work at the stove. I lean back against the cushions and wait for the medication to dull the biting pain in my side. I need the physical discomfort to subside because I need my mind to be razor sharp. The distraction of my parents is neutralized. The enablers are locked out. The perimeter is secure. I reach forward and pick up my work laptop. The screen illuminates, instantly waking from sleep mode. The spreadsheet I built hours ago is still open. The grid contains the IP addresses, the fraudulent commercial loan details, the forged signatures, and the timeline of the stolen $42,000. I look at the name Apex Consulting Group LLC. I look at Brad's registered business address. The time for observation is over. The time for cataloging the abuse is finished. I place my fingers on the keyboard. The quiet in my house is not the quiet of a victim hiding from her abusers. It is the quiet of an auditor preparing a federal strike. I have isolated myself from their emotional manipulation. Now I am going to dismantle their financial survival. I open a new secure browser tab and navigate to the official portal for the Federal Identity Theft Reporting System. The next phase begins now. The Submit button on the Federal Identity Theft portal turns gray. A confirmation number generates on the screen. I copy the alphanumeric string and paste it into the designated cell of my spreadsheet. The digital wheels of the United States government and the commercial banking sector are in motion. But bureaucracy requires patience. Federal investigators do not kick down doors 10 seconds after a form is filed. They process. They verify. They build a paper trail. I am forced to sit on my living room sofa while my body heals and wait for the system to catch up to the crime. Mrs. Higgins moves around my kitchen. She ladles warm chicken broth into a ceramic bowl and sets it on the coffee table next to my laptop. She tells me to eat it before it gets cold and walks out the front door, returning to her own house. The quiet settles over the room again. I sip the broth. It is salty and grounding. I look at the glowing screen of my computer. I open a second tab at the bottom of the workbook. I name it the Texas Timeline. A forensic audit does not just look at the missing funds, it looks at the corporate culture that allowed the theft to occur. If I am going to dismantle the Carter family ecosystem, I need to map the systemic failures that created the environment for a $42,000 identity theft. I begin to type. Growing up in a suburb outside Houston is a specific kind of performance. It is a world measured by outward projection. Olivia was engineered for that world. She was the undisputed queen of the local pageant circuit. My mother invested thousands of hours and tens of thousands of dollars into sequined gowns, vocal coaches, and spray tans. Susan stood in the wings of high school auditoriums, holding hairspray and water bottles, radiating pride. I was the stagehand. My job was to carry the heavy garment bags and steam the wrinkles out of the silk sashes. I learned early that my value in our household was strictly logistical. I was praised when I made the machinery run smoothly and ignored when the spotlight turned on. I moved to row 3 of the spreadsheet, age 16. The divergence in our financial conditioning. I wanted to drive. My father told me driving was a privilege that required fiscal responsibility. He handed me a bus schedule. I got a job at a roadside diner off Interstate 10. I wiped down sticky vinyl booths and carried trays of heavy ceramic plates for minimum wage. My hands smelled like industrial degreaser for 2 years. I saved enough cash to buy a used sedan with a cracked dashboard. I paid my own monthly insurance premiums out of my tip money. I learned the exact conversion rate of manual labor to independence. 2 years later, Olivia turned 16. She did not apply for a job. She complained that taking the school bus gave her social anxiety. She cried at the breakfast table. Thomas drove to a local dealership that same afternoon. He purchased a pristine white Mustang. He handed her the keys at dinner. He told me she needed to feel safe. He did not ask her to pay for gas. He subsidized her comfort while he weaponized my independence. He taught Olivia that tears were a viable currency. He taught me that I was on my own. Row 18, age 22, the college graduation. I spent 4 years studying tax law, forensic accounting, and corporate finance. I worked late shifts at the campus library to avoid taking out predatory student loans. I graduated near the top of my class. I secured a position at a prestigious firm in downtown Austin. The university held a sprawling commencement ceremony in the football stadium. My parents sat in the bleachers. I walked across the stage in the Texas heat and accepted my diploma. I had made reservations at a steakhouse to celebrate. It was a milestone I funded myself. I walked out of the stadium holding my degree, scanning the crowd for Susan and Thomas. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from my mother. Olivia just caught her boyfriend talking to another girl. She is devastated. We are driving her back to her apartment to console her. We will celebrate your degree another time. They skipped the dinner. They abandoned my academic celebration because a 20-year-old boy sent a text message to another girl. I ate a steak by myself at a table set for 4. Every milestone of my life was quietly filed behind Olivia's manufactured crises. My achievements shrank the moment they entered the Carter house. I look at the rows of data. The pattern is stark and undeniable. I spent decades trying to perform well enough to earn a fraction of the attention Susan poured into Olivia. But I was trying to solve the wrong equation. Susan did not ignore me because I was lacking. She ignored me because I did not provide her with a purpose. A competent, independent daughter is useless to a woman whose entire identity is built on rescuing people. Susan built a system to keep her role as the savior secure. Olivia volunteered to be the perpetual victim. She provided a constant stream of emergencies, failed businesses, broken relationships, maxed out credit cards. Every crisis gave Susan a classroom. It gave her an opportunity to organize, direct, and control. It proved that Susan was essential. My competence was simply the backdrop that made her helplessness convincing. And I was the designated shock absorber. A family dynamic structured around a savior and a victim requires a dumping ground for the collateral damage. When Olivia spent her rent money on designer shoes, Susan took the funds from the family vacation account and expected me not to complain about staying home. When Olivia caused a scene at Thanksgiving, I was the one told to apologize to keep the peace. The strong one. That label was a leash. It meant I was expected to absorb the impact of their dysfunction without breaking. But a piece of machinery can only absorb so much kinetic energy before the metal shears. A shock absorber has a weight limit. I look at the screen. The historical tab is full. The chronological map of emotional neglect leads directly to the federal wire fraud. The timeline reveals the escalation. They stole my identity because the system Susan built taught them my boundaries did not exist. They assumed the shock absorber would just take another hit. They assumed I would cover the fraudulent commercial loan because I covered the cost of my own car insurance and my own graduation dinner. I closed the historical tab. The grief burned off days ago. The anger was replaced by clinical precision. I am no longer looking at my parents and my sister with emotion. I am looking at them like a failing corporation loaded with toxic assets. You do not try to reform a toxic asset. You isolate it. You cut your exposure. You liquidate. A chime sounds from my laptop speakers. The notification banner slides into the top corner of the screen. It is an automated email response from the commercial bank in Dallas. The fraud department has received my preliminary filing. The message contains a link to a secure portal. They require a notarized affidavit and an official police report number to initiate the formal account freeze. The waiting period is over. The historical audit is complete. I set the empty soup bowl on the table. It is time to cut the oxygen to their entire financial ecosystem. It is the 5th day of my recovery. The physical pain in my lower abdomen has shifted from a burning tear to a tight, rigid pull. The internal tissue is knitting itself back together. My mind is operating with the same quiet, relentless efficiency. I have the IP addresses. I have the forged electronic signatures. I have the corporate registration data tying my social security number to a house in the Austin Hills. The bank requires a police report and a notarized affidavit to execute a total freeze on the fraudulent accounts. I cannot drive to a police precinct. My medical discharge paperwork explicitly forbids operating a vehicle. I pick up my phone and dial the non-emergency dispatch line for the local police department. The operator answers with a standard greeting. I do not tell her my sister stole from me. I do not frame this as a family dispute. I state that I need to report a felony wire fraud and identity theft exceeding $40,000. I inform her that I am recovering from surgery and request an officer be dispatched to my residence to take my formal statement. An hour later, a patrol car pulls into my driveway. I walk to the front door and let the officer inside. His name tag reads Davis. He is a patrolman, likely accustomed to mediating neighborhood noise complaints and property disputes. He holds a small black notebook and a pen. He asks me to explain the situation. He expects a tearful story about a stolen debit card. He expects messy domestic drama. I do not give him drama. I hand him a printed copy of my spreadsheet. I point to the first column. I show him the timestamp of the credit inquiry. I show him the IP address originating from Brad and Olivia's residential network. I hand him a printed copy of the Articles of Incorporation for Apex Consulting Group, LLC. I point to the electronic signature forging my name as the primary guarantor. I explain the exact mechanism Brad used to bypass the commercial underwriting process. Officer Davis stops treating the interaction like a routine neighborhood call. He looks at the meticulously organized data. He looks at the forged bank documents. He stops writing in his small notebook and asks me for copies of everything I have printed. He realizes he is not documenting a family squabble. He is documenting a severe financial crime. He gives me a business card with a direct phone number and writes the official incident report code on the back. He tells me a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit will be assigned to the case. I thank him. He walks out the door. The first requirement is fulfilled. The second requirement is the legal affidavit. I open my laptop and search for a mobile notary service. In a city like Austin, you can hire someone to certify a legal document in your living room for a standard fee. A woman named Patricia arrives at my townhouse 2 hours after the police officer leaves. She carries a leather briefcase. She sits at my kitchen island and asks for my government-issued identification. I slide my Texas driver license across the granite counter. Patricia examines the ID. She places the bank affidavit in front of me. She asks me to confirm that I am signing the document under penalty of perjury. She asks me to confirm that I did not authorize the opening of the commercial loan and that I have no legal affiliation with Apex Consulting Group LLC. I look her directly in the eye and say I confirm. I sign my name on the dotted line. Patricia signs her name next to mine. She pulls a heavy metal stamp from her briefcase and presses it onto the paper. The physical thud of the notary seal hitting the counter is the sound of a vault door locking. I scan the notarized affidavit using an application on my phone. I log into the secure portal provided by the Dallas Bank. I upload the PDF file containing the sworn statement. I upload a secondary file containing the police incident report number and Officer Davis's contact information. I hit the submit button. 20 minutes later, my phone rings. It is a fraud investigator from the Commercial Lending Division. He confirms receipt of the documents. He informs me that the bank is initiating a total freeze on the fraudulent business account, effective immediately. Brad's access to the stolen capital is officially revoked. The holding company is red flagged across their entire internal network. Any pending transfers will be reversed. Any active debit cards tied to the loan will be deactivated. I do not send a warning text to Olivia. I do not call Brad to demand an explanation. Confrontation is a tactical error in financial warfare. Confrontation gives the parasite time to realize the host is fighting back. It gives them a window to detach and find a new host. If I call Brad and tell him I know about the loan, he will immediately log into the account and attempt to wire the remaining funds to an offshore account. He will drive to an ATM and drain the daily maximum in cash. He will begin destroying the digital paper trail. Silence is the ultimate trap. You do not warn the thief that the door is locked. You simply let them try to turn the handle. I close the bank portal. I am about to shut down my computer when I remember a final loose end. 5 years ago, I had a brief moment of yielding to Susan's pressure. Olivia was 23 and moving into her first apartment. Susan called me and begged me to co-sign a joint credit card with Olivia. Susan claimed it was just for emergencies. She said Olivia needed a safety net for groceries or a flat tire between paychecks. Susan did not want to put her own credit on the line, so she leveraged my sense of duty. I agreed. I opened a card with a low limit and handed the plastic to my sister. I had not thought about that account in years, but a desperate person will drain every available source of oxygen. I open a new tab and navigate to the retail bank portal. I type in my credentials. The account loads. The balance is currently 0. Brad and Olivia had not tapped into this specific reserve yet. They were too busy spending the $42,000 they secured from the commercial loan. I click the Account Management tab. I select the option to report the card lost or stolen. A prompt asks if I want to issue a replacement card. I select No. Another prompt asks if I want to freeze all future authorizations. I click Yes. I terminate her access to the emergency line. I cut off the final valve of their financial ecosystem in one afternoon. I close the laptop. The screen goes black. I walk slowly to the kitchen. I fill a kettle with water and turn on the stove. I place a chamomile tea bag into a ceramic mug. The water boils with a low, steady whistle. I pour the water over the tea and watch the liquid turn a pale golden yellow. I carry the mug back to the living room. I sit on the sofa. I arrange the throw blanket over my lap. The house is perfectly quiet. There are no frantic phone calls. There are no demands for $15,000. There are no orchestrated silent treatments. There is only the steady, reliable hum of the air conditioning unit. I take a sip of the hot tea. I let the slow grinding gears of the American banking and legal system do exactly what they were designed to do. I have removed myself from the emotional equation. I have stopped absorbing the damage of their dysfunction. I am no longer Emma the sister. Emma the sister was a convenient shock absorber who stayed quiet to keep the peace. I am Emma the creditor, and I am calling in the debts. Brad and Olivia are currently walking around Austin, living a lie funded by a crime. They are picking out centerpieces and shopping for imported cribs. They believe they have outsmarted the system. They believe they have secured their status. But the floor beneath them is already gone. They just have not looked down yet. The trap is set. The oxygen is cut. Somewhere in the city, a plastic card is about to be swiped through a payment terminal, and the machine is going to return a single devastating word. It is the 8th day of my recovery. The physical healing process is transitioning from acute pain to a slow, exhausting stiffness. I can walk around my townhouse without relying entirely on the walls for balance. I am standing in my kitchen making a piece of toast when the digital shockwaves finally hit the shore. I hear the distinct ping of an incoming email from my laptop resting on the kitchen island. I do not use a single email address for my entire life. A forensic accountant compartmentalizes data. I have a professional account, a secure financial account, and a general personal account. The personal account is the one I gave my family a decade ago. I left it unblocked intentionally. You do not block every single avenue of communication when you are managing hostile actors. You leave one narrow, heavily monitored channel open. You let them speak because desperate people always put their guilt in writing. I walk over to the island and tap the trackpad to wake the screen. There are 3 unread emails in my personal inbox, 2 from Olivia, 1 from Susan. The timestamps indicate they were sent within 4 minutes of each other. The subject lines are typed entirely in capital letters. I click the first email from Olivia. Emma, my cards are not working. I am standing at the register at Petit Trésor and my transaction was declined. Did you do something? Brad tried to log into his commercial portal to transfer funds, and he is locked out. Call me right now. This is not funny. I read the text with the cool detachment of an auditor reviewing a failing quarterly report. Petit Trésor is a boutique in downtown Austin that sells imported European nursery furniture. A standard crib there costs upwards of $2,000. Olivia was attempting to purchase luxury baby furniture using the commercial loan Brad secured with my forged signature. She was trying to spend stolen capital while I was standing in my kitchen recovering from the surgery she ignored. She is not apologizing for abandoning me. She is enraged that the vault is closed. She assumes I simply logged into an online portal and changed a password out of spite. She assumes this is a sisterly squabble that can be resolved by demanding compliance. She has absolutely no idea the scale of the machinery she has activated. I click the second email from Olivia. Emma, answer your phone. Brad is furious. His holding company account is flagged. He has payroll to meet. You are going to ruin his reputation. Unblock our numbers and fix this before Mom gets involved. I look at the word payroll. Brad does not have employees. Apex Consulting Group, LLC, is a shell corporation registered to a residential address. The only payroll he needs to meet is his luxury car lease and his country club membership dues. He is lying to Olivia about the nature of his business operations to maintain his image, and she is blindly repeating those lies to me as a threat. I close Olivia's emails. I do not reply. I do not type a single word. Responding engages the emotional loop, and I have permanently exited that loop. I click the email from Susan. Emma, stop throwing a tantrum. Your sister is pregnant and you are causing her severe distress. Her cards are declining in public and she is humiliated. Unfreeze her accounts immediately before the stress forces her into early labor. We will discuss your little neighbor stunt later, but right now you need to fix this. I stare at the paragraph. The sheer density of the delusion is staggering. Susan still believes she has the authority to dictate terms. She believes the fraudulent $42,000 commercial loan is simply an extension of the joint emergency credit card. She views Brad's financial crimes as a minor accounting error that I am rudely weaponizing to punish my sister. They still think this is a family spat. They think I am pouting because they missed my medical emergency. They do not understand the legal reality of the situation. They do not understand that I did not simply freeze a joint credit card. I filed a sworn affidavit with a commercial lender and initiated a federal criminal investigation for felony wire fraud. The bank did not lock Brad out of his account because I asked nicely. The bank locked Brad out of his account because they are preparing to hand the file over to the authorities. I move the cursor over the 3 emails. I select them and click the archive button. I drag them into a dedicated folder labeled Evidence. My phone buzzes on the counter. It is a text message from Mrs. Higgins. She is at the grocery store and asking if I need any fresh produce. I type a quick reply asking for a bag of spinach and a carton of eggs. I hit send. The contrast between my biological family and my neighbor is sharp and clarifying. Susan is demanding I facilitate a felony to protect Olivia from the embarrassment of a declined credit card. Mrs. Higgins is navigating the produce aisle to ensure I have enough iron in my diet to recover from major surgery. True family is determined by logistical support during a crisis, not by shared genetics. I close my laptop. The emails will continue to arrive. The panic will escalate as Brad realizes the commercial bank is not responding to his customer service inquiries. He will eventually realize that a red flag on a commercial account triggers a mandatory internal review. He will realize the forged electronic signatures are going to be scrutinized by a fraud mitigation team. The walls are closing in on his illusion. I walk to the living room and turn on the television. I lower the volume and let a local news broadcast provide background noise. I need the distraction. The adrenaline of the financial execution is fading, and the physical reality of my recovery is demanding attention. 10 minutes later, a sharp, aggressive knock hits my front door. It is not the polite, measured knock of Mrs. Higgins returning from the store. It is heavy and rapid. The kind of knock delivered by someone who feels entirely entitled to the space on the other side of the door. I mute the television. I stand up, moving slowly to protect the internal stitches. I walk toward the entryway. The deadbolt is engaged. The security chain is slotted into place. I do not open the door. I lean slightly forward and look through the small glass peephole. It is Brad. He is not wearing a tailored linen suit today. He is wearing a rumpled polo shirt and dark sunglasses. His face is flushed. He is holding his smartphone in his right hand, gripping it so tightly his knuckles are white. He raises his fist and pounds on the heavy wooden door a second time. The vibration rattles the hinges. "Emma, open the door," he shouts. His voice is muffled by the thick wood, but the hostility is undeniable. "I know you are in there. Open the door right now." He did not come to negotiate. He did not come to apologize. He drove to my house because his financial life raft just sank and he wants to force me to pull him back into the boat. He wants to intimidate me in my own home, the same way he tried to intimidate me in the lobby of my office building. I step back from the peephole. I do not speak. I do not acknowledge his presence. If I speak, I give him an audience. If I give him an audience, I validate his anger. I pull my phone from my pocket. I open the security application linked to the camera mounted above my front porch. I press the record button. The screen displays a live feed of Brad pacing furiously on my welcome mat. He runs a hand through his hair. He kicks the base of the door with the toe of his expensive loafer. "You cannot do this to me!" he yells. The audio feeds clearly through the camera microphone. "You are going to call the bank and tell them it was an administrative error. Do you hear me? You are going to fix this, or I swear to God I will make you regret it." He is standing on my property threatening me because I stopped him from stealing my identity. He is leaving a recorded digital footprint of his extortion attempt. I watch the screen. I do not call the police yet. I want him to finish his performance. I want him to say exactly what he intends to do. Every threat he screams at my closed door is another piece of evidence I will hand to the detective assigned to my fraud case. Brad pounds on the door one final time. He spits a curse word onto my porch. He turns around and stalks back to his leased Porsche parked in my driveway. He gets into the driver's seat, slams the door, and reverses aggressively out into the street. The tires screech against the asphalt as he speeds away. I stop the recording. I save the video file directly to the cloud server containing my financial evidence. The timeline is accelerating. The polite facade of the Carter family is fracturing under the pressure of actual consequences. They are no longer using silent treatments and passive-aggressive social media posts to control me. They are resorting to physical intimidation and verbal threats. They are desperate, and desperate people always make massive tactical errors. Brad just made his first mistake. He proved he is a hostile actor, but he is only the symptom of the disease. The true source of the toxicity is still operating under the delusion that she can manage this crisis. Susan is not going to let this go. She is going to escalate. She is going to leverage the entire extended family to force me back into compliance. The real war is about to begin, and it will be fought on a much larger stage. Monday morning arrives. The weekend served as a buffer. The physical recovery is progressing. The internal stitches pull less when I stand. I walk into my home office and boot up my work laptop. I connect to the secure virtual private network of my accounting firm. My direct office extension is routed to my cellular phone. I am clearing out my inbox when the device chimes. The caller identification displays a local Texas area code, but it is not a saved contact. I answer the call using my professional greeting. A woman speaks. Her voice is coated in a thick, syrupy drawl. It is a voice designed for Sunday school luncheons and neighborhood gossip exchanges. Emma, honey, it is Aunt Brenda. Brenda is my mother's older sister. She lives 3 towns over. She is the president of her local garden club. She is a woman who trades secrets over iced tea. Toxic family systems do not function in isolation. When the primary abusers realize their direct intimidation tactics fail, they dispatch emissaries. They send flying monkeys. The flying monkey is usually a relative who believes they are acting as a noble peacemaker. In reality, they are just an extension of the primary abuser sent to drag the rogue asset back into line. I do not hang up. I place the phone on speaker and set it on my desk. "Hello, Aunt Brenda," I say. She sighs into the receiver. A heavy theatrical sigh. "Emma, your mother called me yesterday." She was crying. "Family is family, honey. You cannot ruin your sister's life over a misunderstanding. She is carrying a child. You need to be the bigger person and let this go." I listened to the script. It is the exact narrative Susan planted. My mother framed my absence and the frozen accounts as a petty sibling rivalry. She weaponized Brenda to deliver the guilt trip because my mother knows my numbers are blocked. I do not get defensive. Defensiveness is an emotional response, and I am operating purely on data. I pick up a pen and twirl it between my fingers. "Aunt Brenda," I say, keeping my voice project room steady, "there is no misunderstanding. Brad and Olivia forged my social security number. They registered a fraudulent holding company. They used my identity to steal $42,000 from a commercial lending institution to pay for their lifestyle. The Dallas Bank Fraud Unit and the local police are currently investigating this as a felony." The syrup drops out of Brenda's voice instantly. The line goes dead silent. I can hear her breathing. The cognitive dissonance is hitting her brain. She called to scold a petulant niece and walked straight into a federal crime briefing. "Wait," Brenda stammers. "The confidence is gone. Susan said you were just jealous of the baby. She said you froze a shared emergency credit card out of spite because you felt left out of the gender reveal." I write the word jealous on a sticky note and stick it to my monitor. It is a brilliant lie. It is plausible enough for an outsider to believe. But a lie cannot survive a paper trail. "Susan is covering up a crime," I reply evenly. "She is lying to you to protect her country club reputation. If you want proof, you can ask Brad for the incorporation documents of Apex Consulting Group." Aunt Brenda does not say goodbye. She does not defend my mother. She simply hangs up the phone. The click echoes in my quiet office. Brenda is a gossip conduit. By the end of the day, half of my extended family will know about the police investigation. My mother's carefully curated narrative is about to face a hostile audit. I turn my attention back to my laptop. It is 10:30 in the morning. I have a scheduled video check-in with the managing partner of my division. His name is Bennett. He is a veteran forensic auditor with silver hair and a penchant for black coffee. He has spent 20 years testifying as an expert witness in corporate embezzlement trials. He reads balance sheets the way other people read fiction. The video connects. Bennett looks at me through the screen. He asks about my surgical recovery. I tell him the medical timeline is proceeding as expected, but I need to formally request an extension on my medical leave. I also need to make a disclosure for compliance purposes, I tell him. In the financial auditing sector, personal financial compromise is a serious security issue. A compromised employee is a liability to the firm. I explain the situation. I do not ask for pity. I lay out the mechanics of the identity theft. I list the timeline, the forged LLC, the stolen capital, and the active police report. Bennett does not offer empty sympathy. He does not tell me family is family. He leans forward and looks at his own monitor. "Did you lock the major credit bureaus?" he asks. I confirm I did. "Did you file the federal identity theft affidavit?" I confirm the document is uploaded. Bennett nods once, a sharp approving gesture. He understands the exact mechanics of the fraud. He has watched executives go to federal prison for the exact scheme my brother-in-law just attempted. "Take all the time you need, Emma," he says. "If the local police stall the investigation, let me know. The firm has retained counsel who specializes in pushing these exact cases through the district attorney pipeline. Do not let them intimidate you." I thank him and end the call. This is what actual support looks like. It is actionable. It is professional. It does not require me to shrink myself to make someone else comfortable. At noon, I hear a soft knock on my front door. I walk to the entryway and look through the glass. It is Mrs. Higgins. I open the door. She is holding a canvas tote bag. She steps inside and walks to the kitchen. She pulls out a bag of fresh spinach, a carton of eggs, and a loaf of sourdough bread. She sets them on the counter. I pull a $20 bill from my wallet and hold it out to her. She waves the cash away with a flick of her wrist. "Put your money away," she says. "You can bake me a pie when you are cleared to stand for more than 10 minutes. She looks toward the front window. "Did the angry man in the sports car come back this morning?" she asks. I shake my head. "No, he has not returned." "Good," she says. "I wrote down his license plate number just in case. Call me if he shows his face on this street again." She leaves through the front door. I stand in my kitchen looking at the fresh groceries on the granite island. The contrast is blinding. I am surrounded by two distinct groups of people. My blood family consists of Susan Thomas, Olivia Brad, and Brenda. They want me to absorb a felony. They want me to smile for cameras while they steal my financial future. They view my boundaries as an act of treason. My found family consists of a 68-year-old neighbor who feeds stray cats and a corporate auditor who drinks black coffee. They bring me food. They offer me legal protection. They write down license plate numbers. They do not demand a performance. They just require honesty. The tactical freeze-out failed. The physical intimidation failed. The flying monkey failed. Susan is running out of options. Brenda is currently spreading the reality of the police investigation through the suburban network. The lie about my jealousy is collapsing under the weight of the truth. My mother knows she is losing control of the narrative in her social circle. She needs a visual prop to counter the gossip. She needs undeniable proof that the Carter family is united and functional. I walk out my front door and down the concrete driveway to check the mail. The midday sun is hot against my shoulders. I open the metal box and pull out a stack of envelopes. Most of it is standard billing statements and advertisements, but hidden in the middle of the stack is a thick, heavy square envelope. It is made of expensive cream-colored cardstock. The return address is printed in elegant gold foil. I look at the handwriting on the front. I recognize the looping cursive instantly. The final stage of the performance is about to be set. I stand in my driveway with the afternoon sun beating down on my shoulders. I hold the heavy square envelope in my hands. The paper is thick cream cardstock. It is expensive, the kind of stationery that costs a significant amount per sheet. I slide my index finger under the flap and break the wax seal. I pull out the invitation. The text is embossed in elegant gold foil. Olivia's baby shower. The date is set for this coming Saturday. The venue is listed at the bottom. The Austin Country Club. Tucked behind the formal printed card is a smaller piece of matching stationery. It is a handwritten note. The cursive is tight and controlled. The blue ink presses deep into the paper, leaving faint ridges on the reverse side. It reads exactly 3 sentences. "We expect you to be there. We need to present a united front. Family forgives." I read the words a second time. This is not a polite request, it is a subpoena. 2 weeks have passed since my emergency surgery. My physical recovery has progressed smoothly. The internal stitches dissolved. The pain is a distant, fading memory. But the legal machinery I set into motion is currently operating at peak capacity. The commercial bank in Dallas did not quietly close their file. The fraud investigators sent formal inquiries to Brad's registered business address. The local police department escalated my report to a dedicated financial crimes detective. The stolen capital is entirely inaccessible. Brad and Olivia are suffocating under the weight of a frozen financial ecosystem. They cannot pay their vendors. They cannot cover their luxury car leases. The walls are closing in on them tight and fast. Faced with impending legal ruin and federal wire fraud charges, my mother falls back on her primary survival instinct. She decides to throw a lavish party. To understand Susan Carter, you must understand the sociology of the Austin Country Club. She spent 12 years cultivating the relationships required to secure her spot on the membership committee. She played tennis with the wives of local judges. She organized charity auctions with real estate developers. That club is her fortress. It is an ecosystem built on wealth presentation and rigid social codes. To Susan, an active felony investigation is manageable as long as nobody in the main dining room knows about it. The truth does not matter to her. The optics are the only reality she respects. The Austin Country Club represents the pinnacle of her crafted reality. She rented the main ballroom for this baby shower. She invited 80 guests. The guest list will consist of local business owners, prominent politicians, and the exact women she brunches with every Tuesday. But Aunt Brenda has been talking. The gossip about a police investigation is already circulating through the suburban network like a slow-acting venom. Susan knows the whispers are starting. She knows her friends are calculating my absence. She knows the country club locker rooms are buzzing with rumors about Brad's declining credit cards and my sudden disappearance from the family portrait. If I do not show up, the high society Texas guests will ask questions. A missing sister at a lavish family celebration is a glaring anomaly. People will tilt their heads and inquire about my health. They will ask Susan why her eldest daughter is absent from such a significant milestone. Susan needs me in the room to legitimize the lie. She needs me to hold a pastel teacup and smile for the hired photographer. She needs the visual proof that the Carter family is a united front. My presence is the only thing that can sanitize their crumbling reputation. She believes she can command my compliance by invoking the concept of moral grace. Family forgives. She uses the word forgive as a weapon. In her vocabulary, forgiveness does not mean accountability. It does not mean restitution. It means I am obligated to grant them amnesty for their crimes so they can avoid the consequences. It means my boundary is an offense they are graciously willing to overlook if I return to my designated role. She is demanding I provide the padding for their fall. I walk back inside my house and lay the invitation on the kitchen island. I look at the gold foil lettering reflecting the overhead lights. 80 guests, the main ballroom, the Austin Country Club. It is the perfect stage. For 30 years, Olivia has performed for an audience. She used the audience to validate her manufactured fragility. She relied on public settings to manipulate the narrative because she knew I would never cause a scene. I was conditioned to maintain the peace. I was trained to absorb the humiliation quietly while she secured the sympathy of the crowd. Every time she threw a tantrum at a family gathering, I was the one instructed to step outside and let her shine. I open my laptop. I navigate to the digital RSVP link printed at the bottom of the invitation. The web page displays a customized form asking for my meal preference. I select the standard chicken option. I click the button to confirm my attendance. IRSVP yes. I do not submit the response to save them. I do not plan to attend the event to protect my mother's country club standing. I am going because the most effective way to end a theatrical production is to walk onto the stage and hand the audience the actual script. If I stay home, they will simply rewrite my absence. Susan will tell 80 affluent guests that I am unwell. Olivia will shed a tear and accept their condolences for having such a difficult, estranged sister. They will spin my silence into their own victory. They will use my empty chair as a prop to garner sympathy. To dismantle a toxic system, you must strike the load-bearing pillar. The load-bearing pillar of the Carter family is not money, it is public perception. They stole my identity to fund their lifestyle because their lifestyle is the only thing that matters to them. If I strip away the perception, the entire structure collapses into dust. I walk into my home office. I open the locked filing cabinet beside my desk. I retrieve the thick manila folder containing the physical copies of my financial evidence. The police incident report, the forged articles of incorporation, the notarized affidavit, the commercial loan documents displaying Brad's residential IP address. I place the folder on my desk. I run my hand over the smooth paper. I do not need a microphone. I do not need to raise my voice. I just need facts. The baby shower is scheduled for this coming Saturday afternoon. I have 4 days to prepare. I do not need to pick out a gift. I do not need to buy a pastel dress to blend in with the floral theme. I need to select an outfit that commands the room. I need to prepare my voice to deliver an audit report in front of 80 people who came expecting a celebration. The anticipation builds a cold, steady rhythm in my chest. I have spent my entire career walking into boardrooms and presenting undeniable data to hostile executives. I know how to hold my ground when a room turns against me. I know how to let the numbers speak for themselves. The confrontation is moving from the private shadows of suburban text messages into the bright, unforgiving light of a Texas afternoon. My sister wants an audience. She is going to get one. Saturday afternoon arrives with a punishing Texas heat, the kind of temperature that distorts the air above the asphalt and forces everyone indoors. I drive my own vehicle to the venue. My medical clearance was updated yesterday. The internal stitches are holding firm. The physical pain is reduced to a distant, manageable echo. I am no longer confined to my living room sofa. I am mobile and my mind is operating with a cold, relentless efficiency. I steer my car through the heavy wrought iron gates of the Austin Country Club. The tires crunch over the crushed white limestone of the circular driveway. A valet wearing a crisp uniform steps forward to open my door. I step out onto the shaded portico. I do not look like a woman who recently survived an emergency organ removal. I do not look like the discarded sister who was left alone in a hospital bed. I am wearing a sharp, tailored navy suit. The wool blend fabric is structured. The lapels are exact. I paired the suit with a simple white silk blouse and pointed leather heels. My hair is pulled back into a severe, neat arrangement. I did not select a pastel dress to blend in with the aesthetic of my mother's party. I did not choose floral prints. I chose the exact attire I wear when I am dispatched to audit a hostile corporate board. I dress to command authority. I look like the woman who owns the building. I walk through the grand double doors of the clubhouse. The lobby smells of imported floor wax and expensive citrus room spray. A concierge directs me toward the main ballroom at the end of the long corridor. The heavy oak doors are pinned wide open. I step into the threshold and survey the physical manifestation of my family's delusion. The ballroom is draped in yards of pale pink and light blue pastel silk hanging from the ceiling in elegant swags. Towering centerpieces of white hydrangeas sit on every circular table. A string quartet plays a classical arrangement in the far corner. Waiters in black vests weave through the crowd carrying silver trays of sparkling water and small appetizers. I look at the 80 guests circulating through the space. This is not a gathering of close friends. This is Susan S. Board of Directors. I see a local district judge holding a crystal glass. I see the owner of the largest commercial real estate firm in Travis County. I see the affluent women from my mother's Tuesday brunch circles sipping mimosas. These people are politicians, local business owners, and socialites. They are the exact audience my mother relies on to validate her existence. I cross the threshold and step onto the polished hardwood floor. I do not hover near the perimeter. I do not attempt to shrink against the wall. I walk straight down the center aisle. The room notices my arrival. A physical ripple of awareness moves through the crowd. Conversations pause mid-sentence. The clinking of glassware stops. Eyes dart toward me. Aunt Brenda clearly did her job. The rumors of a police investigation and frozen commercial accounts have circulated through the suburban network. The guests are actively examining me. They are searching for the bitter, jealous sister Susan described to them. They expect to see a fractured woman. Instead, they see a forensic accountant walking with the measured cadence of an executioner. Susan spots me from the opposite side of the room. She is wearing a tailored lilac dress. Her face undergoes a rapid, transparent transformation. First, I observe sheer relief. Her necessary prop has arrived. She needs me in the room to legitimize her lie, but the relief is immediately followed by sharp, calculating panic. She processes my navy suit. She processes my unyielding posture. She realizes I am not here to play the quiet, compliant stagehand. She intercepts me before I can reach the center of the ballroom. She closes the distance with hurried, frantic steps. She reaches out and grabs my left forearm. Her grip is tight. Her fingernails dig through the wool fabric of my sleeve. "You came," she hisses under her breath. Her smile is fixed and bright. It is an unnatural expression, engineered entirely for the guests watching us from the surrounding tables. "Smile, Emma. Do not cause a scene today." I look down at her hand gripping my arm. I do not smile. I speak in a normal conversational volume. "Let go of my arm, Mom." She flinches. She drops her hand as if the wool burned her fingers. Her fixed smile wavers. She takes a half step back, unsure of how to manage a daughter who no longer absorbs her physical cues or responds to her intimidation. I do not wait for her to recover. I look past her shoulder, scanning the room for the rest of the cast. I locate Thomas standing near the catering station. He is holding a small porcelain plate of appetizers. He sees me looking at him. He freezes. For 32 years, his primary survival tactic has been avoidance. He proves his consistency right now. He immediately turns his body 90 degrees. He pretends to be deeply fascinated by a large swan ice sculpture melting slowly on the buffet table. He refuses to make eye contact. He chooses to stare at frozen water, rather than look at the daughter whose medical emergency he ignored. He is a coward looking for a bunker. I continue my sweep of the room. I locate the center of the production. Olivia is holding court near a towering display of wrapped gifts. She is wearing a flowing floral maternity dress designed to emphasize her pregnancy. She is surrounded by a circle of older women. She tosses her head back, laughing loudly at a story told by the judge's wife. She radiates an aura of serene maternal joy. She is performing her role flawlessly, soaking in the attention and the validation of the Austin high society. Brad is standing a few feet behind her. He is wearing a light gray suit. He attempts to project the image of a successful venture consultant, but an auditor learns to read micro-expressions. Brad has gray bags under his eyes. He taps his thumb nervously against the side of his glass. The commercial bank locked his holding company account days ago. He sits in a room that costs thousands of dollars, knowing he lacks the liquidity to pay for his luxury car lease. His confidence is a hollow shell crumbling under the weight of a federal inquiry. Olivia turns her head. Her eyes sweep the room and lock onto mine. We are standing 30 feet apart. The laugh dies in her throat. The serene maternal aura evaporates. For a fraction of a second, the curated facade drops entirely. I see the truth. I see the woman who stole my social security number. I see the woman who forged a commercial loan to pay for luxury cribs. Genuine, unadulterated fear flashes across her face. Her eyes widen. Her mouth goes slack. She knows I hold the federal affidavit. She knows the vault is closed. She knows I am the only person in this building with the power to send her husband to prison. But the fear only lasts for a single heartbeat. The survival instinct kicks in. Olivia is a creature of the stage, and she knows the audience is watching. She knows she must control the narrative before I can speak. She raises her hand and signals the hired event photographer standing near the gift table. She points toward me. The photographer lifts his heavy camera and follows her gaze. Olivia pastes a brilliant, ecstatic smile onto her face. She pushes through the circle of older women and rushes across the hardwood floor toward me. She projects her voice, ensuring the sound carries over the string quartet and the chatter of the guests. "Emma," she calls out loudly. She throws her arms wide open. She crashes into me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders in a highly visible theatrical embrace. Her floral dress brushes against my navy suit. She smells like expensive floral perfume and nervous sweat. She squeezes me tightly, ensuring every guest in the room witnesses the profound bond between the Carter sisters. The photographer drops to one knee. The camera shutter clicks rapidly. The bright white flash of the strobe light bursts across the room, blinding me for a split second. I do not push her away. I do not step back. I stand perfectly still. I let her wrap herself around me. I let her rest her chin on my shoulder. I stare directly into the camera lens. I let the photographer capture the lie. I let the audience see the performance one final time. I let my mother exhale a sigh of relief, believing her optics are secure. Olivia leans her head near my ear under the guise of sisterly affection. She whispers through clenched teeth, "Just play along until the guests leave, Emma. Do not ruin this for me." She steps back, holding me at arm's length for one more photograph. Her smile is blinding. The guests nearby offer soft, appreciative murmurs. The united front is temporarily established. The catering manager walks to the center of the room. He taps a spoon against a crystal glass. He announces that the luncheon service is about to begin. He asks the guests to find their assigned seats. The crowd begins to shift, moving toward the decorated tables. The trap is now fully populated. The audience is taking their seats. The curtain is rising on the next act, and my sister is preparing to hand me the perfect cue. The waiters distribute the main course with the mechanical efficiency of a well-funded country club. They wear black vests and white gloves, placing porcelain plates of seared chicken and roasted asparagus in front of the 80 guests. I sit at table 7. My assigned seat places me next to Aunt Brenda and a woman named Eleanor. Eleanor serves on the local zoning board and organizes the annual spring charity gala. The seating arrangement is a highly tactical decision by Susan. I am not positioned at the head table with the immediate family. I am placed in the middle of the ballroom, flanked by women who specialize in extracting and distributing gossip. Aunt Brenda spends the first 20 minutes of the meal cutting her chicken and deliberately avoiding my gaze. She remembers our phone call from earlier in the week. She remembers the phrase, "felony wire fraud." She sips her iced tea and pretends to be entirely fascinated by the floral arrangement in the center of the table. She knows a detonation is possible, and she is trying to stay out of the blast radius. Eleanor, however, lacks the necessary context. She is a woman who thrives on social conformity and polite conversation. She leans toward me, holding her silver fork. She asks how my recovery is progressing. She mentions that Susan told the brunch circle I contracted a severe stomach virus that kept me isolated in my townhouse for 2 weeks. I do not correct Eleanor yet. I look directly at her and state that my physical health is no longer a concern. The cold, steady delivery of my voice effectively ends her inquiry. She blinks, offers a tight, polite smile, and turns her attention back to her plate. I consume the meal. I require sustenance to maintain my physical focus. The mechanical act of cutting the food and chewing provides a necessary grounding rhythm. I need my mind to remain sharp. At the head table, Susan orchestrates the flow of the event. She nods to the catering manager. She signals the string quartet to lower their volume during the meal service. She operates in her element, directing the staff and ensuring her guests are properly serviced. Thomas sits next to her. He eats his meal in silence, staring at the condensation forming on his water glass. He looks like a man waiting for a delayed flight in a crowded terminal. He has surrendered all agency to his wife. Brad sits on the other side of Olivia. He wears a light gray suit that fits perfectly. He attempts to project the image of a successful venture consultant relaxing on a Saturday afternoon. He laughs with the man seated across from him. He raises his glass for a toast. But an auditor learns to read micro-expressions and physical tells. Brad checks his phone every 3 minutes. He taps his thumb nervously against the edge of the heavy wooden table. The commercial bank froze his holding company account days ago. He sits in a room that costs thousands of dollars, knowing he lacks the liquidity to pay the utility bills for his modern farmhouse. His confidence is a fragile facade masking a deep mounting panic. The waiters clear the main course plates. They distribute small, delicate dishes holding slices of lemon tart. The ambient noise in the ballroom begins to shift. The low hum of conversation dips. The string quartet stops playing entirely, placing their bows across their music stands. The catering manager walks to the head table holding a wireless microphone. He hands the device to Olivia. Olivia stands. She smooths the front of her floral maternity dress, pressing her hands against her stomach to emphasize the pregnancy. She waits for a full 10 seconds, allowing the silence to stretch across the room. She demands the undivided attention of the audience, and 80 guests willingly provide it. Forks are set down. Linen napkins are placed on laps. Every single eye turns toward the front of the room. "Thank you all for being here today," she begins. Her voice echoes through the built-in ceiling speakers. The audio is crisp and clear. She possesses a natural, undeniable talent for public speaking. The cadence is perfectly practiced. The tone is light and musical. She smiles, radiating a warm maternal glow. "This year has been a profound journey," she says, looking slowly across the crowded room. "We have experienced so much joy preparing for this new life. I want to take a moment to thank my incredible parents. Mom, you designed a beautiful afternoon. You always know exactly how to make a space feel like a sanctuary. Dad, thank you for your quiet, steady strength." Susan touches her linen napkin to the corner of her eye, wiping away a performative tear. Thomas offers a tight, rigid smile, acknowledging the praise for a strength he does not actually possess. Olivia turns slightly toward Brad. She places her free hand on his shoulder. "And I want to thank my husband," she continues, her voice softening. "Brad, you are my foundation. You work so hard to provide for our growing family. You carry the heavy weight of your business, so I can focus on our future. You are going to be an exceptional father." Brad covers her hand with his own. He looks up at her, projecting deep devotion. It is a stunning, breathtaking display of collaborative fiction. He works hard to provide for his family by forging my signature on commercial loan documents. He carries the weight of his business by ignoring the federal fraud investigators actively knocking on his digital door. The lie is so bold and delivered with such sincerity that it demands a grim level of professional respect. They are embezzling sympathy from the audience. Olivia turns back to face the 80 guests. The radiant smile fades from her face. She lowers her chin. She transitions into the next critical phase of her script. The musical tone is replaced by a somber, reflective pitch. "But life is not always easy," she says. "Every family faces unexpected obstacles. We are often tested by the people we hold closest to our hearts." The tension in the ballroom spikes immediately. The guests lean forward in their chairs. This is the exact moment the Austin high society craves. They attend these lavish functions for the catering and the floral arrangements, but they stay for the veiled domestic drama. Some people let jealousy drive a wedge into those sacred relationships. She continues, pacing her words for maximum impact. Some people allow bitterness to blind them to the beautiful blessings right in front of them. It is truly heartbreaking when someone you love chooses pride over connection. She does not look at me yet. She lets the heavy words hang in the air above the tables. She paints the portrait of an innocent victim. She establishes the narrative that she was deeply wronged by an unseen force of malice. But family is not about holding grudges, she says, her voice executing a flawless, practiced crack. The vocal break is timed perfectly. It occurs right at the apex of the emotional arc. Family is about unconditional grace. It is about opening your arms and your heart even when you have been terribly hurt. She finally shifts her gaze. She looks directly past the centerpieces. She looks directly at table 7. She looks directly into my eyes. I am so incredibly grateful that my sister Emma decided to finally show up today, she says. The microphone amplifies her words, ensuring they reach the farthest corners of the room. I am so glad she is here to prove that love is ultimately stronger than pride. I forgive you, Emma. We all forgive you. Let us move forward together and heal. The ballroom erupts into applause. The guests clap enthusiastically. The older women at the adjacent tables nod their heads in solemn agreement, wiping their own eyes. Aunt Brenda exhales a long breath of relief, believing the crisis has been averted. Eleanor smiles brightly and claps her hands together, touched by the display of sibling reconciliation. Susan stands up from her chair and begins to clap her face, beaming with vindicated pride. Brad smirks, taking a long, arrogant sip of his water. Olivia just executed a masterful public relations maneuver. She successfully rewrote the history of the past 3 weeks in front of 80 witnesses. She omitted the ruptured appendix. She omitted the emergency surgery. She omitted the identity theft and the stolen $42,000. She framed my absence and my silence as a product of my own toxic jealousy. She framed her financial crimes as a minor familial slight that she magnanimously overlooks. She assigned me the role of the bitter forgiven villain, and she assigned herself the role of the gracious injured saint. She thinks the performance is over. She thinks the loud applause is the final verdict. She hands the microphone back to the catering manager and sits down in her chair. The audience begins to return to their desserts. The ambient chatter resumes, filling the room with a cheerful buzz. I sit at table 7. I do not clap. I do not smile. I look at my hands resting on the white linen tablecloth. My heart rate remains entirely steady. The adrenaline pumping through my veins is cold and efficient. My sister built a stage. She gathered a wealthy, influential audience. She handed me the perfect cue. She assumes the heavy social pressure of 80 affluent guests will force me to lower my head and accept her public pardon. She assumes I will not break the rigid rules of country club etiquette. An auditor does not care about social etiquette. An auditor cares about the ledger, and the ledger is bleeding. I place my hands on the edge of the table. I prepare to stand. The transition from the silent observer to the active participant is about to happen. The applause has faded from the room. The script is about to undergo a radical, permanent revision. I place my hands on the edge of the table. I push my chair back. The wooden legs scrape sharply against the polished hardwood floor. The sound cuts through the soft residual applause and the cheerful buzz of the ballroom. I stand up. I smooth the front of my tailored navy blazer. I do not walk toward the head table. I do not reach for the microphone resting on the metallic stand. I do not need artificial amplification. My voice is calibrated for hostile boardrooms and quarterly financial audits. I know how to project sound from my diaphragm to reach the back wall of a massive space without shouting. Forgiveness requires honesty, I say. The delivery is project room steady. It is devoid of tremor or hesitation. The clinking of dessert forks against porcelain stops immediately. The low hum of affluent conversation evaporates into the chilled air conditioning. 80 faces pivot toward table 7. The waiters freeze in the aisles, holding silver trays of lemon tarts suspended midair. The ballroom transforms from a celebration into a deposition in less than 3 seconds. I maintain direct eye contact with Olivia. She is still standing near the gift display. Her triumphant smile falters. The edges of her mouth twitch downward. 3 weeks ago, I went into emergency surgery, I continue. My appendix ruptured. I called my parents from the pre-op bay at Houston Memorial. They chose not to come to the hospital. They chose not to visit me because they had paid a non-refundable deposit on a helicopter for a gender reveal party. They prioritized a colored powder photo opportunity over a critical medical crisis. A distinct low murmur ripples through the surrounding tables. The high society guests are conditioned to value appearances, but they also operate on a strict internal code of maternal duty. Abandoning a child during surgery violates the foundational rules of their social contract. Eleanor, the zoning board member, seated to my right, stiffens. She looks from me to Susan. The polite narrative of my mild stomach virus shatters completely in her mind. Susan spent 5 years courting Eleanor for a seat on the annual charity gala committee. I watch 5 years of social climbing disintegrate in Eleanor's horrified expression. I look at my mother. Susan is seated at the head table. Her face goes chalk white. The blood drains from her cheeks, leaving her carefully applied blush, looking stark and unnatural against her pale skin. She grips the edge of the white linen tablecloth so tightly her knuckles match the fabric. She is witnessing the instantaneous destruction of a reputation she spent 12 years meticulously building. The country club is her sanctuary, and I just locked the doors and lit a match. But that is not why we are divided, I say. I keep my hands perfectly still by my sides. I do not point fingers. I do not pace. A forensic accountant knows that physical movement distracts an audience from the severity of the data. You must force the room to focus entirely on the numbers. You anchor your body so the facts carry the kinetic weight. We are divided because during that exact surgery, my sister and her husband utilized my personal data to commit a federal crime. I state clearly. They used my social security number to forge a commercial business loan. They registered a fraudulent holding company to my identity. They stole $42,000 from a Dallas bank to pay for their lifestyle. They stole my financial future while I was unconscious under medical anesthesia. The silence that descends on the ballroom is absolute. It is a heavy, suffocating vacuum. It is the terrible witnessing kind of silence. Nobody gasps. Nobody whispers to their neighbor. They just stare. The only sound in the massive room is the faint, steady dripping of water from the melting swan ice sculpture hitting a metal drainage pan on the buffet table. The guests in this room are local business owners, commercial real estate developers, and municipal politicians. They understand capital. They understand the severe legal mechanics of commercial lending. When Olivia gave her speech about jealousy and bitterness, they thought they were watching a standard family melodrama. They thought they were consuming a minor domestic spat. Now they realize they are sitting in the middle of an active crime scene. They look down at their fine china plates and realize they are eating seared chicken paid for with stolen money. The floral centerpieces, the pastel silk drapery, the string quartet, it is all funded by a felony. I shift my gaze to Brad. He spent the last 2 hours mingling with these wealthy executives. He handed out his embossed business cards. He pitched his imaginary venture consulting firm to men who actually move millions of dollars through the Texas economy. Now those same men are looking at him. They are running the calculations in their heads. They recognize a predator. Brad shrinks into his chair. His shoulders cave inward. The tailored light gray suit suddenly looks cheap and ill-fitting. The arrogant smirk is entirely erased from his face, replaced by a gray, sickly pallor. He is exposed. He cannot use his loud voice or his leasing portfolio to talk his way out of a room full of people who know exactly how to spot a fraudulent asset. He looks at the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom, measuring the distance to the exit. Olivia opens her mouth to speak, but no sound comes out. Her vocal cords betray her. The script she memorized did not account for undeniable facts. She cannot manufacture tears to wash away a bank affidavit. She looks desperately towards Susan, begging her mother to intervene and restore order. She wants the savior to step in and fix the broken machinery. But Susan cannot save her. Susan is paralyzed by the collective gaze of 80 peers. She realizes that any attempt to defend Olivia will implicate her in the cover-up of a major financial crime. The system she built to protect her golden child is collapsing under the crushing weight of public scrutiny. The shock absorber she relied on for 30 years is no longer absorbing the impact. The force is bouncing back and shattering their foundation into irreparable pieces. Aunt Brenda sits frozen beside me. Her iced tea remains untouched. She knew about the police investigation from our phone call, but hearing the clinical details delivered in a quiet ballroom strips away the protective layer of suburban gossip. She is forced to confront the raw, ugly reality of her sister's household without the buffer of a telephone line. She stares straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. I look around the room. I hold the silence. In an audit, you present the discrepancy, and you let the silence force the opposing party to react. Desperate people hate silence. It compels them to fill the void with their own mounting panic. I know someone at the head table is going to break. The pressure inside the room is too immense. The carefully curated illusion is dead, and they are standing directly over the corpse. I wait. I breathe. The cold, steady focus in my mind expands, pushing out the last remaining traces of my childhood conditioning. I did not come here to seek their validation or ask for their love. I came here to deliver the consequences they spent 3 decades avoiding. The Austin Country Club is no longer a sanctuary for the Carter family. It is a tribunal. And the defendants are finally out of maneuvers. Emma, stop it. The shriek rips through the heavy, silent air of the Austin Country Club ballroom. It is not the polished, measured tone Susan Carter uses for committee meetings. It is a raw, desperate sound. She lunges upward from her chair at the head table. The sudden, violent movement knocks her crystal water goblet onto the floor. The glass shatters against the hardwood. The sharp cracking noise amplifies the tension. "This is a family matter," she screams, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You have no right to do this here. We will discuss this at home." I look at the broken glass on the floor and then directly into my mother's panicked eyes. I do not raise my voice to match her pitch. I keep my delivery project room steady. "You invited 80 people, Mom," I reply coldly. "You rented a ballroom. You hired a string quartet and a professional photographer. You chose to make this a public matter the second you decided to use my presence as a prop to sanitize a felony. You do not get to dictate the venue now that the script has changed." The brutal logic of the statement lands like a physical blow. Susan flinches, taking a step backward. She looks frantically at the local district judge seated 2 tables away. She is searching his face for an ally, for someone to intercede and restore decorum. The judge does not look back at her. He is staring at his plate, his expression carefully neutral. In Texas, high society nobody steps between a forensic accountant and a forged commercial loan. They protect their own assets first. Susan realizes in that singular devastating moment that her social capital is entirely worthless. Olivia realizes it too. The curated maternal glow she projected minutes ago vanishes. The realization that she is exposed triggers a visceral, uncalculated reaction. She bursts into tears. Not the beautiful, photogenic tears she shed during the helicopter drop. Not the practiced musical crying she utilized to extract $15,000. These are real, ugly, heaving sobs. Her chest heaves, her face contorts, and her makeup begins to run in dark streaks down her cheeks. "You are ruining my day," she screams, her voice cracking wildly. "You are lying. You have always been jealous of me, and now you are making up these insane lies to destroy my shower." I maintain my physical position. I do not cross my arms. I do not take a defensive stance. I reach slowly into the inner breast pocket of my tailored navy blazer. I withdraw a folded piece of heavy stock paper. I walk 2 steps to my right, placing me directly next to the towering display of wrapped gifts. I unfold the paper. It is a high-resolution copy of the police incident report, complete with the official seal of the Financial Crimes Unit. Stapled behind it is the formal fraud confirmation letter from the commercial bank in Dallas, detailing the freeze on the account registered to Apex Consulting Group, LLC. I drop the document onto the center of the gift table, right next to a silver rattle wrapped in a pastel blue ribbon. "The bank does not think I am lying," I state, addressing the room. "The detectives currently reviewing the IP addresses from your residential network do not think I am lying. The notary who certified the affidavit of forgery does not think I am lying." A collective gasp finally breaks the silence of the audience. The guests are no longer polite observers. They are active witnesses to the implosion of a local dynasty. Several women near the back of the room are already reaching for their designer purses, signaling their immediate departure. The exodus is beginning. The illusion of the affluent Carter family is bleeding out on the hardwood floor. I shift my attention to Brad. He is standing rigid behind his chair. His face is a mask of sheer, unadulterated panic. The arrogant venture consultant persona is dead. He is a cornered animal, calculating his physical proximity to the heavy oak double doors at the rear of the ballroom. His eyes dart from the police report on the gift table to the exit and back again. He is running the math on flight versus surrender. He takes a half step backward. His shoe scrapes loudly against the floor. "Do not move, Brad," I advise him, my tone dipping into a cold warning. "Leaving this room right now will only expedite the execution of the warrants. Fleeing a venue paid for with stolen funds does not look good in a federal deposition." He freezes. His jaw clenches so tightly I can see the muscle jumping in his cheek. He is trapped and he knows it. Suddenly movement catches my peripheral vision. Thomas Carter, the man who spent 3 decades retreating to his garage to avoid conflict, is stepping forward from the head table. His hands are trembling visibly. He looks old. The polished veneer of the suburban patriarch is stripped away, exposing the hollow, frightened core. He walks slowly toward me, stopping 10 feet away. He does not look angry. He looks utterly defeated. "Emma, please," he whispers. His voice is weak, a fragile rasp. "Please stop. Think about what you are doing to us. Think about our name." I look at my father. He is not begging me to stop because he is worried about my emotional state. He is not intervening to protect my sister from the legal consequences of her actions. He is begging me to stop because he is terrified of the reputational damage. He is mourning the loss of his carefully constructed comfort. He is asking me to absorb the impact one last time so he does not have to deal with the messy reality of his failures. "You built a house of cards on my back, Dad," I reply, my voice softening just a fraction, allowing the exhaustion to bleed through. "You spent 30 years prioritizing the appearance of a family over the actual people in it. You let Olivia steal my future because holding her accountable was too inconvenient for you. I did not destroy this family. I simply stood up and the cards fell." Thomas lowers his head. He does not argue. He knows the ledger is accurate. He turns around and slowly walks back to the head table, collapsing into his chair. He covers his face with his trembling hands. The dismantling is complete. The pristine, wealthy facade is shattered beyond repair. The silence in the ballroom is replaced by the chaotic, frantic noise of a sinking ship. Guests are standing up, pushing their chairs back hastily. The polite murmurs have escalated into loud, urgent whispers. Eleanor, the zoning board member, grabs her purse and practically runs toward the exit, refusing to look at Susan as she passes. The exodus becomes a stampede. The Austin High Society is fleeing the scene, desperate to distance themselves from the radioactive fallout of a financial crime. Susan is standing alone near the broken crystal glass, screaming at the retreating guests to sit back down. She is begging them to stay, trying to physically block the path of the district judge. He gently but firmly pushes past her, his face set in grim determination. Her social capital is evaporating in real time. Olivia is still standing near the gift table, sobbing hysterically. Her mascara is ruined. The maternal glow is replaced by the stark terror of a woman realizing she is no longer immune to consequences. Brad is hovering near her, looking at his phone with wide, panicked eyes, likely reading the frantic automated alerts from his locked commercial accounts. I stand in the center of the room, surrounded by the collapsing infrastructure of my past. I have stated the facts. I have delivered the undeniable data. The shock absorber is gone. I am ready to turn around and walk out the doors to leave them in the wreckage they created. But the final calculation is not yet balanced. The math requires one more entry. The ballroom is nearly empty. Only a handful of confused waiters and my immediate family remain. I adjust the cuffs of my navy blazer. I take a slow, deep breath, filling my lungs with the chilled air conditioning. I turn my attention back to the man who thought he could outsmart a forensic accountant. The confrontation is about to reach its logical, devastating conclusion. I am about to deliver the final statement. The ballroom resembles a hollowed-out shell. The rapid departure of the Austin High Society leaves behind a stark, quiet wasteland of half-eaten lemon tarts, discarded linen napkins, and overturned wooden chairs. The string quartet packed their instruments minutes ago, slipping out a side corridor to avoid the collateral damage. The only remaining sound in the vast space is the steady, rhythmic dripping of the melting swan ice sculpture. The water hits the silver drainage pan, dropping like a metronome, keeping time at a funeral. My immediate family stands frozen in the wreckage of their curated illusion. Susan is gasping for shallow breaths near the head table. Thomas is staring at his shoes. Olivia is wiping dark streaks of ruined makeup from her cheeks. But the dismantling is not finished. An audit is never complete until the final ledger balances to zero. The math requires one more entry. I turn my attention back to my brother-in-law. Brad is using the distraction of the fleeing guests to orchestrate a silent retreat. He slides his leather loafer backward across the polished hardwood floor. He shifts his weight, attempting to slip unnoticed toward the grand foyer. He believes the public humiliation is the full extent of his punishment. He thinks he can walk out to the parking lot, start his leased sports car, and outrun the paper trail. "You should not leave, Brad," I say. My voice slices through the quiet. The command halts his retreat instantly. His shoulders stiffen. He turns his head slowly, looking at me with hollow, terrified eyes. He knows he has lost, but he does not yet understand the true depth of the trap. Because the $42,000 you stole, I continue taking a single measured step toward him. You did not just use it to pay your auto lease and your utility bills. You used a portion of that stolen capital to pay the final deposit on this exact room. I watched the realization hit his face. The color drains from his skin, leaving a sickly, translucent pallor. A forensic accountant tracks every routed dollar. I did not just flag the commercial loan, I followed the disbursement wire. I tracked an $8,000 electronic transfer from his fraudulent holding company directly into the primary operating account of the Austin Country Club. I called the venue manager at 7 o'clock this morning, I inform him. I introduced myself as a corporate auditor. I provided the transaction identification number and the corresponding police incident report code. I informed the manager that his prestigious club was currently holding stolen funds linked to an active federal investigation. Country club managers are highly risk-averse professionals. They protect the reputation and the liability of their institution above all other concerns. When I told the manager that hosting this baby shower made the club an unwitting party to a felony, he did not hesitate. He verified the routing number in his accounting software. He saw the red flag on the ledger. Right on cue, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom swing wide open. The club manager stands in the threshold. He wears a dark tailored suit and a grim, uncompromising expression. He is not alone. Flanking him on either side are two uniformed officers from the Austin Police Department. The visual contrast is jarring. The dark, rigid uniforms of law enforcement stand out sharply against the draped pastel silk and the white hydrangeas. The officers do not unholster weapons. They do not shout commands to get on the ground. White-collar detentions in affluent zip codes are precise bureaucratic procedures. They are not here to tackle a suspect. They are here to provide an official escort to the precinct for formal questioning regarding felony wire fraud and identity theft. They carry clipboards and handcuffs resting securely in leather pouches on their duty belts. Brad stares at the officers. His chest rises and falls in rapid, panicked intervals. He looks at his tailored gray suit. He looks at the exit he will never reach. The imaginary venture consulting firm, the fabricated wealth, the country club status, it all dissolves into the harsh reality of a criminal mandate. He is a fraud, and the authorities are standing in the doorway waiting to process him. The arrival of the police triggers the final catastrophic collapse of the Carter family structure. Susan clutches the fabric of her lilac dress right over her sternum. She gasps, pulling air into her lungs with a sharp wheezing sound. She grabs the edge of the dining table to keep her balance. It is not a cardiac event. It is a severe physiological panic attack brought on by the permanent death of her social standing. She is watching uniformed officers walk into a venue she rented to arrest her son-in-law. The scandal will dominate her Tuesday brunch circle for the next decade. She will never be permitted to sit on a charity board again. Her brand is dead. She looks at me, her eyes wide and pleading, asking me to stop a machine that is already running at full speed. I offer her nothing but a cold blank stare. Olivia shatters. The quiet weeping escalates into hysterical wailing. She drops to her knees on the hardwood floor regardless of her designer maternity dress. She grabs Brad by the hem of his gray suit jacket, crying out to the officers that there has been a terrible mistake. She transitions from the golden child to the wife of a suspect in a matter of seconds. The protective bubble Susan built around her is punctured. There is no one left to absorb this damage. Olivia will have to answer the questions. Olivia will have to face the financial ruin. Olivia will finally have to survive her own consequences. Thomas remains seated at the head table. He watches the officers cross the room. He does not stand up to defend his daughter. He does not comfort his hyperventilating wife. He simply lowers his head, staring at his own hands. He chose the path of least resistance for 32 years, and it led him directly into the center of a criminal spectacle. One of the officers approaches Brad, asking him to confirm his identity. The manager looks at Susan, informing her that the event is officially terminated and the premises must be vacated. I do not stay to watch the handcuffs click into place. I do not linger to watch my sister cry or my mother hyperventilate. An auditor closes the file when the discrepancy is resolved. The ledger is balanced. The toxic assets are liquidated. I turn my back on the head table. I walk down the center aisle of the ballroom. My leather heels click against the floor with a steady rhythmic cadence. I pass the second police officer. I exchange a brief professional nod with the club manager. I step through the heavy oak doors and walk down the long carpeted corridor. I push through the front entrance of the clubhouse and step out into the bright, blinding Texas sun. The heat hits my skin, instantly burning away the chilled, sterile air of the ballroom. It feels different now. It feels cleansing. The valet spots me and jogs to retrieve my vehicle. He pulls my car up to the shaded portico. I hand him a folded bill. I slide into the driver's seat and close the door. The interior of the car is quiet. My phone rests in the center console. It is silent. The block list is holding firm. My credit is secure. The commercial bank is protected. I shift the car into gear. I drive down the crushed limestone path and pass through the wrought iron gates. I merge onto the access road and accelerate onto Interstate 35. The city of Austin stretches out before me, a vast network of concrete and glass shimmering in the afternoon heat. I grip the steering wheel. I feel the smooth leather beneath my palms. I take a deep breath, pulling the air deep into my lungs. The internal surgical stitches hold tight, a testament to my own physical resilience. I was the stagehand. I was the shock absorber. I was the expendable daughter designated to carry the weight of their dysfunction. But I refused the assignment. I applied the math. I documented the truth. I watched the country club disappear in the rearview mirror, reducing to a small, insignificant speck on the horizon. For the first time in 30 years, I am not managing a crisis. I am not bracing for a manufactured emergency. I am completely, utterly free. 6 months have passed since that afternoon in the Texas sun. Brad's federal wire fraud trial is scheduled for next spring, and the modern farmhouse is in foreclosure. Olivia is living in a cramped rental, finally learning the brutal, unforgiving math of existing on a legitimate income without a safety net. My parents haven't reached out. The silence they once used to punish me has become the sanctuary where I thrive. Looking back at the finalized ledger of my past, the numbers make perfect sense. Dismantling the Carter family illusion taught me 3 undeniable truths that I will carry for the rest of my life. First, you are never obligated to be the shock absorber for someone else's toxic dysfunction. Your competence and your strength are tools meant for your own survival, not an unpaid insurance policy for their reckless choices. Second, silence is not submission. When you stop arguing with abusers, you stop handing them a script to manipulate. You give yourself the quiet, necessary space to gather the data, audit the reality, and build an airtight exit strategy. Third, true forgiveness requires absolute honesty and systemic accountability. Anyone who demands you be the bigger person without addressing the offense isn't asking for forgiveness. They are simply demanding your compliance. My townhouse is peaceful now. Mrs. Higgins still stops by on Sundays. My career is soaring, and my credit score is back to an immaculate 812. The balance is permanently restored. If you are watching this and keeping the peace is costing you your sanity, it is time to close their accounts. You owe yourself the truth. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me about a time you had to set a hard boundary. You're watching PV Vengeance, and I will see you in the next story.